Chapter 687. The second phase of the fierce competition was gradually coming to an end. Most of the golden rings on Cheong-Chi's body in the small world had been transferred to the hands of the cultivators who were participating in the spell assembly, except for Cheong-Chi's own golden ring, which was destroyed by Cheong-Chi. Therefore, the cultivators also targeted the others and began to snatch the golden rings from them. Su Yunxing of the celestial sect of Xianmen was one of the first to enter the small world. Apart from obtaining some golden rings from hunting Cheong-Chi, he had also obtained a few golden rings from fighting other cultivators. Thus, he was the first to collect 10 golden rings and successfully advanced to the third stage as the first person in the group. Dao Yuding was slightly slower than him. The time spent in the second stage was basically the same, but Dao Yuding's group was slightly later than Su Yunxing's group in the first stage of climbing the Starry Sky Pagoda. In the end, the difference in time was basically the same. Chen Xingyu, who was in the third place, attracted more attention. Not only did his presence prevent Xianmen Tianzong from monopolizing the first 2 places, but the 10 golden rings he collected in the second stage were all obtained from hunting Cheong-Chi. Chen Xingyu's 10 golden rings were all obtained from Cheong-Chi. From the beginning to the end, he did not fight with other cultivators. He did not snatch anyone's golden rings, nor was he robbed by anyone. He did not even come into contact with other cultivators. The cultivators in the Spreading Law Hall were just amazed, but the group of primordial spirit experts in the All-Heaven Grand Hall all revealed knowing smiles. It was not a coincidence that Chen Xingyu did not meet other cultivators. Instead, he was always one step ahead of others before they noticed his presence. There were also other cultivators who could do this. Some of them would specifically look for other cultivators to see if they had any golden rings on them. However, every time Chen Xingyu found other cultivators, he would avoid them. Due to the unexpected situation in the Starry Sky Pagoda, Chen Xingyu's group actually entered the second stage later than Su Yunxing and Dao Yuding. However, after collecting 10 golden rings and passing the second stage, he did not fall too far behind and successfully took third place. At that time, the Heavenly Sword Sect's disciple Kong Hai, who had arrived at the top of the Starry Sky Pagoda with him and entered the small world, only had 3 golden rings. He was busy ambushing Shi Shaoqian and Shi Jingyun with fanxiefeng. After Chen Xingyu, everyone was hoping that there would be another cultivator from another power who could seize the 4th place, but in the end, the 4th place was still taken by little Lin Tong, who came from the celestial sect of 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 the celestial sect. Xiao Yin was overjoyed. Snatching my goddaughter's things? Please, including everyone who participated in the Starry Sky Pagoda, there are less than 5 people who can rob Tong in a duel. Luo Qingwu smiled and shook her head. Little Tong appearance is too deceiving. Her strength is currently number 1 among Fun Tianya's direct disciples. Xiao Yin pointed at her and smiled. Just like you. Luo Qingwu giggled and waved her hand. Xiao Wu can't do it. I should say, she's just like little senior brother back then. Thinking about how Shi Tianhao beat up Yuanying Patriarch when he was only 10 years old, Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the others laughed even more. Next, I'm afraid the 5th place will be that Heavenly Sword Sect's Kong Hai. It's a pity for Yunsong. After laughing, Yu Hongyan looked at the light illusion and sighed. At this moment, in the pocket dimension, there was a conspicuous golden number 10 on top of Zhou Yunsong's head. He had also gathered 10 golden hoops and was now quietly waiting for 15 minutes to pass before he would be transported out of the pocket dimension. However, the time that Zhou Yunsong took to gather 10 golden hoops was slightly later than Kong Hai. In this way, the time that he would be transported out of the pocket dimension would also be slightly later. Yang Qing smiled. The world is unpredictable. Anything can happen. This is the original intention of the rules of the Starry Sky Pagoda. To be fair, Kong Hai's strength actually couldn't reach his current result. However, with many coincidences, he had the hope of becoming the 5th place, which was better than many people. Chu Yang directly gave Kong Hai 7 golden hoops, indirectly kicking Kong Hai out of the game. Not only did he not affect the situation on his side, it was also equivalent to guaranteeing Kong Hai's advancement to the 3rd stage. Everyone in the Spreading Law Hall looked at the lucky Kong Hai and could not help but shake their heads and sigh. This luck was too good. Just as they were thinking about this, something strange happened. A figure suddenly appeared in front of Kong Hai. It was a tall youth who looked to be in his 20s. He had a handsome face and a determined expression. The number 1 of the Lei family's younger generation, also known as the young master of the Lei family, Lei Jie. The golden light above Lei Jie's head flashed. It was a golden number 5, indicating that he already had 5 golden hoops. In the 1st stage, Lei Jie did not walk with his group, but climbed the starry sky pagoda alone. Even so, his speed was extremely fast, even faster than the combined speed of the others in his group. Lei Jie had actually reached the top of the pagoda very early. However, due to the rules, he had to wait at the top of the pagoda until his group arrived. Only then did they advance to the 2nd stage and enter the pocket dimension. According to the 8 groups that advanced in the 1st stage, Lei Jie's group belonged to the bottom. However, at this time, Lei Jie had already collected 5 golden hoops, displaying the same strong strength as when he ascended the pagoda. When Kong Hai saw Lei Jie, his brows furrowed slightly. He was not afraid of him, but he had already collected 10 golden hoops. All he needed to do was to advance. There was no need to waste his spiritual power and mental energy to fight with Lei Jie. Thinking of this, Kong Hai once again used the heavenly sword escape, wanting to escape far away and avoid Lei Jie, who knew that just as he moved, a shadow flashed in front of him. The speed was so fast that it made Kong Hai's skin crawl. Lei Jie's entire body flickered with azure lightning. Kong Hai wanted to escape, but every time, Lei Jie would block him. Kong Hai was fast, but Lei Jie was even faster. He was like a ghostly lightning. Kong Hai looked at the surging green lightning on Lei Jie's body in shock. That green lightning of his is a little strange. His speed is even faster than my heavenly sword escape technique. It's practically comparable to my Sek's Great Tao heavenly sword. Shushan's Shaozi sword artifact, Celerita's sword Sek's instant sword escape, is only SOSO. 5 golden hoops or all 10 of them, Lei Jie said calmly, his voice like thunder. Kong Hai was unwilling. The time limit is almost up. How can I just give it to you for free? He made a hand seal, and a sharp sword chi that pierced through the heavens shot straight into the 9 heavens, as if it was a path to heaven. His body and sword became one, intending to attack Lei Jie. This time, however, he wasn't trying to escape. Instead, he was trying to fight Lei Jie head-on to determine the victor. Lei Jie's expression didn't change as he formed a hand seal. Balls of azure lightning flew out from his body and condensed into a phantom image in midair. Under the pitch-black sky, dark clouds rolled and lightning flashed, as if the end of the world had arrived. An aura of great disaster, great destruction, and great suffering emanated from it. Thick lightning snakes twisted continuously, and the phantom image seemed to present a horrifying hell full of lightning. This was the Lei clan's secret, top-notch mystique, lightning purgatory. It threw opponents who dared to oppose it into a hell of lightning to suffer endless torture, never to be reincarnated. If it was just the lightning purgatory, although it was powerful, it was nothing to Kong Hai. His heavenly sword Sek's sword arts were above the Lei clan's. However, it was different from ordinary lightning purgatory. Within the phantom image of the purgatory above Lei Jie's head, thousands of lightning bolts actually gradually condensed in the air, transforming into a roaring giant god of lightning. In the illusory sky, 9 mysterious auras faintly converged on the giant god of lightning, causing its power to grow stronger and stronger. Later on, the giant god of lightning actually showed signs of turning illusory into reality, as if it was about to become a real existence and descend into this world. Dazzling azure lightning lit up all over the giant god of lightning, clashing with Kong Hai, sending him flying along with his sword. Kong Hai's entire body was shaken to the point that his spiritual power was unstable, his spirit was shaken, and his blood and qi were in turmoil. He had actually been injured in that exchange just now. The giant god of lightning's body also collapsed, but it was not destroyed by Kong Hai. Instead, it transformed on its own, collapsing but not dissipating, turning into a sea of lightning that trapped Kong Hai. The lightning lashed at Kong Hai like whips, constantly whittling away at his spiritual power. Kong Hai was shocked. His heavenly sword escape's sharp spiritual power was actually on the verge of collapse under the bombardment of the opponent's azure lightning. If this continued for a long time, Lei Jie would definitely break through his defenses and use his lightning to destroy him. At this point, Kong Hai did not dare to continue stubbornly. He hurriedly called out, "I'll give you 5 golden hoops." Although he was a little cowardly, he still had 5 golden hoops left. It was not impossible for him to continue advancing. There was no mortal enmity between them, and it was not necessary to fight to the death. Perhaps an all-out attack could injure the opponent, but Kong Hai did not think that was necessary. Since Kong Hai was willing to hand over the 5 golden hoops, Lei Jie did not continue to force him. He took the 5 golden hoops and left. The golden number above his head also changed from 5 to 10. Kong Hai looked at the number 5 above his head and smiled wryly. This turn of events caught the spectators by surprise. Kong Hai, who had been proud of himself just a moment ago, had become someone else's bride in the blink of an eye. Apart from Lei Jie replacing Kong Hai in collecting the 10 golden hoops, there was another direct result of this sudden change, which was that Zhou Yunsong, who had been slightly behind Kong Hai in time, advanced to the 3rd stage in 5th place. Lei Jie had only just obtained the golden hoops from Kong Hai, so he naturally fell behind Zhou Yunsong. In the end, Lei Jie advanced to the 3rd stage in 6th place. In 7th place was Chu Yang, who had found the golden hoops he had hidden in the beginning. This dark horse who had stood out in the 2nd stage could be considered a dark horse to the very end, stunning everyone. Even if he did not have any performance in the 3rd stage, he could be considered to have made a name for himself in this Dharma assembly. Everyone's attention was focused on the illusion of light and shadow. Now there was only one advancing spot left, but it was still up in the air. Chapter 688. After Chu Yang successfully collected all 10 golden rings and advanced to the 3rd stage in 7th place, there was only one spot left to advance to the next stage. At the moment, the situation in the pocket dimension was still unclear. Because cultivators could snatch each other's golden rings, no one could guarantee that they would be able to advance to the next stage until the very last moment. Even if they collected all 10 golden rings, they would need to survive the last 15 minutes to be able to use them to their fullest potential. Kong Hai was the best example. At the last moment, he was robbed by Lei Jie and could only bitterly continue searching for the golden rings. Zhu Yi's voice rang out at the same time in the Xianmen Tianzong True Disciple Room in the Spreading Law Hall and in the Central Hall of the Cloud Peak. There are many unexpected situations, and it's hard to predict whether it's a blessing or a curse. Other than calmly facing it when it happens, you have to accumulate more experience and practice. Take this fellow Taoist Kong Hai from the Heavenly Sword sect as an example. His true strength isn't enough for him to collect all 10 golden rings so quickly, but he has his own advantage, which is that his movement technique is fast enough. That's why by chance, when others are fighting, he actually benefits from it. But his true strength is still lacking, so when his advantage in speed is gone, he can only give up his golden rings to Lei Jie, who is stronger in both speed and direct combat ability. Xiao Yan also smiled. To forge iron, one needs to be strong. Otherwise, even if one can live happily for a while, there will come a time when he hits a wall. The group of Xianmen Tianzong disciples nodded in agreement. After Xiao Yan and Zhu Yi finished their lecture, Yang Qing smiled and said, "But this fellow Taoist Lei Jie's strength is also extraordinary. Although fellow Taoist Kong Hai is known for his speed, his strength isn't inferior to fellow Taoist Song Qingyuan from the Heaven Pool sect and fellow Taoist Gu Lei from the Purple Cloud Taoist." Yu Hongyan also nodded and smiled. "This Lei Jie is indeed extraordinary. I remember that the 9-Qi True Thunder body is a top-notch lightning Tao cultivation physique." Zhu Yi said, "Other than his innate bone frame, this person is also outstanding in other aspects. Although there were some accidental factors, his advancement isn't considered an underdog." Luo Qingwu smiled and said, "Senior Brother Yi, who do you think will be the last one to advance? Ing Rosa, Goldie, Murong Yenran, Wan Qiu, and Luo He are not among these 5. Zhu Yi smiled. Originally, there should have been no suspense. However, the affairs of the world are unpredictable. As for who it will be, that will depend on fate. Shi Jingyun of the Great Qin dynasty also had high hopes, but after what happened just now, he doesn't have a single gold ring left. It's going to be very difficult." Luo Qingwu and the rest nodded. At this moment, in the illusory scene of light and shadow, a few people appeared. The numbers above their heads were bigger, which meant that they had many golden hoops and were in the lead. Huang Jinting had 6 golden rings, Ing Luoza had 9, Murong Yenran had 6, Zhuge Wanqiu had 7, and Purple Cloud Dao Luo he had 6. They were the 5 people who had the most golden rings in the small world right now. However, Huang Jinting was in a bit of trouble now. He was being targeted by Shi Jingyun and Shi Shaoqian. The little princess was first ambushed by Fan Xiefeng and then benefited from Chu Yang. She was in a bad mood. When she saw Huang Jinting, it was as if she had seen her enemy. Her eyes reddened, and when she saw the huge golden number 6 above Goldie's head, she did not hesitate to attack. Shi Shaoqian and Goldie did not have much interaction, but the 6 golden rings in Goldie's hands were undoubtedly very attractive to him, so he immediately attacked. Huang Jinting was entangled by them. Seeing that neither of them had golden numbers above their heads, he did not want to bother. Although he had the temperament of a child, he knew that getting results in the spell assembly was more important. However, after being entangled by Shi Jingyun and Shi Shaoqian for a long time, and even seeing a Qiongqi slip past him, Goldie's temper flared, and the 3 of them immediately fought. Inside the All Heavens Hall, Xiao Yan and the others looked at Zhu Yi. Zhu Yi showed a rare bitter smile and shook his head. "Goldie, I'm afraid we won't make it in time. If Shi Jingyun and the others had golden rings, Huang Jinting would at least gain something if he won. Now, it would be a waste of time. If Shi Jingyun and the others won, they would get 6 golden rings from Huang Jinting. If Huang Jinting won, he would get nothing. Other than Huang Jinting, the other disciple of Xianmen Tianzong, Zhuge Wanqiu, was also in trouble. Zhuge Wanqiu had 7 golden rings on her body. To others, she was undoubtedly a big fish, so many people came to attack her. Facing the attacks of 3 opponents, Zhuge Wanqiu was still handling them with ease, but her mind was a little uneasy. Not far away, a man dressed in a different tribe's attire was staring at them silently, as if he was observing his prey and waiting for an opportunity to attack. There was a scar on the man's right shoulder. It was obvious that he had gone through a big battle. The golden number 2 above his head indicated that he had 2 golden rings on his body. The man did not attack Zhuge Wanqiu, but he did not have any intention of helping her either. It was as if he was waiting for the 3 people to exhaust Zhuge Wanqiu's magic power and spirit. Zhuge Wanqiu looked at the wound on the man's shoulder, and her heart skipped a beat. "This injury seems to be caused by Irosa." As if noticing Zhuge Wanqiu's gaze, the man laughed coldly. The three people attacking Zhuge Wanqiu also noticed the man and felt a little uneasy. The northern militant royal court and Xianmen Tianzong had always been close. My name is Zhuolei. You definitely don't know me. The man looked at Zhuge Wanqiu and grinned, but no matter how you looked at it, there was a hint of cruelty in it. However, it is enough that you know Irosa. Zhuge Wanqiu's heart sank. Senior Irosa and I are from the same sect, so of course I know him. The northern militant Zhuolei laughed coldly. You don't just know him, right? Don't say that I'm not blind. Even a blind person can see that lowly slave's affection for you. Zhuge Wanqiu frowned. Brother from the northern militant royal court, our sects have always been on good terms. Aren't your words a little rude? Zhuolei looked up and laughed. An escaped slave who shot his own master. Do you think that you can change your skin by entering Xianmen Tianzong? Dream on. He pointed at Zhuge Wanqiu and laughed cruelly. That lowly slave shot my father, so I will definitely make him pay the price today. You are his lover, so I will start with you. Although I can't really do anything to you in this small world, I can still make you suffer. As he spoke, the blood in his body exploded and he rushed towards Zhuge Wanqiu. Zhuolei was stronger than the other three. As soon as he joined the battle, the pressure on Zhuge Wanqiu immediately increased. In the All Heavens Hall, the northern militant First Chanyu's eyes narrowed and he turned to look at Lin Feng. Lin Feng was calm and waved his hand slightly. The personal grudges of the younger generation should be settled by the younger generation. First Chanyu need not worry about it, and I will not take it to heart. In the small world, Zhuolei's moves were ruthless as he tried to get close to Zhuge Wanqiu. He was a martial arts cultivator, while Zhuge Wanqiu was a pure spell cultivator. Once he got close, the situation would become disadvantageous for Zhuge Wanqiu. However, at this moment, a sharp black light came from afar and immediately forced Zhuolei to retreat. Zhuolei had suffered under the black light before, so he did not hesitate and immediately retreated. However, one of the cultivators who surrounded Zhuge Wanqiu was not so lucky and did not dodge in time. The black light flashed and directly triggered the protective barrier of the Hongfa Hall. The remaining two people turned pale with fright and hurriedly tried to retreat, but it was no longer up to them. Zhuge Wanqiu, who had been on the defensive, immediately counterattacked. Spell after spell came rolling over, preventing her opponents from escaping. As one of the top disciples in the desolate Sky Valley, Zhuge Wanqiu's magical power and divine power were quite extraordinary. However, her personality was more passive and conservative, and she was used to defending and counterattacking. Just now, Zhuolei had been watching from the side, and she was not completely confident, so she slowly dragged it out with her opponent. However, now she could attack without worry. Zhuolei was no longer a threat. This was because a dark-skinned young man was approaching quickly from afar. It was Irosa. Irosa sneered and looked at Zhuolei. Zhuolei, look at you now. Where is the pride of a grassland wolf? You escaped from me, and now you want to hit on a woman. You are worse than a stray dog. I don't even want to kill you now. You will only dirty my hands for nothing. Zhuolei's eyes were filled with shame and anger. He said angrily, You escaped slave who killed your master. Do you think that you can change everything by worshipping under the Xianmen Tianzong? A lowly slave will always be a lowly slave. You shot my father, so I will make you pay. Irosa smiled carelessly, revealing his white teeth. That's right. My father, my mother, and I were once your tribe's slaves. However, were we born to be slaves? My family was originally a herdsman. We fled the famine and joined your tribe. However, we were forced to be slaves by your family. Because you worshipped under the king to learn martial arts, no one dared to interfere. Irosa's eyes were cold. I killed your father, but if he hadn't whipped my father and mother to death, I would have run away if I had the chance. How could I have rewarded him with that knife? Irosa opened his arms as if he was embracing the world. I like my sect. I am grateful to it for allowing me to be where I am today. However, I like this place not only because it has given me so many things but also because I simply like it here. Because I like one of the rules here. Irosa let out a long howl. Anyone who owes us must pay back. If you dare to not pay back, we will beat you until you pay back. Irosa pointed at Jolie. To be honest, your family still owes me a life. I only kill the culprit and don't care about anything else. That is why I did not return to the grassland after becoming a disciple of my sect and starting a massacre. However, you provoked me today. Do you think you can escape a second time? The magical power restriction of the Great Law Hall can protect your life, but it can't protect your other belongings. As he spoke, Irosa had already pounced at Jolie. In an instant, he was already in front of Jolie. Jolie had been lucky enough to escape from Irosa's knife. Now, he wanted to escape again, but he was already injured and could not do so. He was trapped by Irosa. In the Great Hall of All Heavens, Luo Qingwu watched this scene and frowned slightly. This person is truly despicable, but has he lost his mind? Not to mention that he dares to be so impudent on our sect's Jade Capital Mountain. They are all in the Great Law Hall now. He can't really hurt Irosa, Wanqiu, and the others. Even if he harbors hatred, he should find another opportunity. By doing this now, other than exposing his own intentions, what else can he do? Zhu Yi's expression was calm as he stared at the illusion of light and shadow. He used his magical power to transmit his voice to her. Junior sister, don't be impatient. Oh! Luo Qingwu turned her head and glanced at Zhu Yi. She rolled her eyes and did as she was told. She calmed down and waited for any changes. Chapter 689. Previously, Jolie had once joined hands with others to attack Irosa and was injured by him. Jolie was quick to seize the opportunity and decisively abandoned the others to escape. But this time, he could not escape. The second most vicious incident of this spell exchange had occurred. Jolie had one of his arms and one of his legs cut off by Irosa, becoming a complete cripple. As a martial cultivator, his future was undoubtedly ruined. The people of the other factions were all discussing this. These two vicious incidents with serious consequences were both committed by Xianmen Tianzong's disciples. This inevitably caused others to mutter in their hearts, feeling that Xianmen Tianzong's style was too tyrannical. On the contrary, the cultivators of the northern militant court did not show any dissatisfaction. Most people looked at Jolie with disdain, and some even felt awkward and ashamed. Strictly speaking, Irosa was also considered a northern militant person. In the eyes of the northern militant court's cultivators, his personal grievances with Jolie were not a big deal. On the contrary, Jolie was unable to defeat Irosa, so he went to find trouble with Zhuge Wanqiu. This made many northern militant people feel ashamed. When the tribes of the grasslands fought, it was common for them to rob women and children. When it came to hunting, the result was everything. No matter the means, as long as they won. However, private duels between martial cultivators were seen as a battle between the brave and the strong. Harming others and kidnapping hostages were all things that only the weak would do. Even the northern militant chief, Chan Yu, did not express any dissatisfaction. He did not think that the northern militant court had been slapped in the face by Xianmen Tianzong, but rather that Jolie had smeared their name. Some cultivators who were familiar with the northern militant people could also see this point. They did not think that this matter would cause a rift between Xianmen Tianzong and the northern militant court. However, some people who did not understand the situation began to let their imaginations run wild. Because of the precedent set by Zhou Yunsong, Xianmen Tianzong once again adopted the policy of not suing the officials and not investigating. In the miniature world, Irosa silently looked at Jolie, who was lying on the ground and staring at him with a venomous gaze. He grinned, his snow-white teeth seeming to flash with a cold light, After leaving the Great Law Hall, no matter when, I welcome you to find me again. But at that time, there will be no Great Law Hall to protect you. Eloza laughed. You should be thankful that you have 2 gold rings on you. For these 2 gold rings, I will give you a quick death. Otherwise, I will leave you here to fend for yourself. Zhuolei shouted, You. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, Ing Luo Zha's palm was like a blade, chopping down. The Great Law Hall's mana restriction activated, sending Zhuolei out. On the other side, Zhuge Wanqiu had also finished off the remaining 2 opponents. Unfortunately, apart from Zhuolei, the others only had 1 golden ring on them. Iroza tossed one of the golden rings to her, and put away the other. The golden number above his head changed from 9 to 10. Zhuge Wanqiu smiled and said, Congratulations, senior apprentice brother, you have collected all the golden rings. Iroza looked up and saw the number above her head change from 7 to 8, and then to 9. After a moment of silence, he said, About 100 miles east of here, there is a valley. There is a golden ring buried under the largest pine tree in the forest in the valley. Go and retrieve it. We don't know how many people have advanced. If you hurry up, you might be able to make it. I will accompany you for the last 15 minutes. Zhuge Wanqiu was stunned. Senior apprentice brother Iroza nodded. I buried that golden ring. The first time I met Zhuolei, I only injured him and let him run away. He said that he would harm you, and from his expression, it didn't seem like he was lying. It seemed like he really had a way to find you, so I chased him all the way. Although this guy is as cowardly as a dog, he grew up in the grassland. He is very good at tracking and anti-tracking. He just wanted to escape, so I chased him all the way here, Iroza said calmly. Eloza calmly said, With 10 golden rings on me, I'll be teleported away in a quarter of an hour, so I dropped one. But fortunately, Zhuolei has 2 ready-made golden rings on him, so I don't have to specially go back. I will have to trouble you. I must get one of Zhuolei's golden rings immediately. Although I don't know how Su Yunqing's harvest is, I believe it won't be bad. Iroza pursed his lips. I want to win against him. Zhuge Wanqiu looked at Iroza and mumbled after a long while. Iroza, you don't have to do this. This is Hongfa Hall. Hongfa Hall can only save lives. Iroza interrupted her. I just cut off one of that dog's hands and one of his legs. I have confidence in your cultivation. Zhuolei, that trash, is no match for you in a one-on-one fight. Even with the 3 people just now, even if I didn't arrive, they wouldn't be able to do anything to you. But what if there are more enemies and a more dangerous environment? There are many dangers in this small world, and accidents are bound to happen. Us Xianmen Tianzong disciples are also the target of everyone, so I have to be careful. Iroza said, Now that Zhuolei has been taken care of, even if we meet people from other sects, we might still be in danger, but we are much safer. Zhuge Wanqiu looked into Iroza's eyes. Senior brother Iroza, have you ever thought that during the time you were helping me, senior brother Su might have already advanced to the 2nd stage? Iroza clenched his fists, but he remained silent and did not speak. Zhuge Wanqiu also did not speak, and silently walked side by side with Iroza, hurrying east. The golden numbers above their heads, 1, 10, and the other, 9, naturally attracted many people's attention, but they were all defeated by the 2 of them. It was a pity that these people did not have golden rings. Iroza suddenly stopped and looked at Zhuge Wanqiu, saying, My time is up, it's up to you now. Be careful. Zhuge Wanqiu nodded. Senior brother, don't worry, I'll be fine. In the next moment, the golden numbers above Iroza's head suddenly dispersed, turning into a golden pillar of light that enveloped Iroza. The top of the pillar of light shot straight into the sky, and Iroza's body automatically floated up into the sky under the guidance of the pillar of light. Once enveloped by the pillar of light, the cultivator would not be able to leave the pillar, and the people outside would not be able to attack the cultivator within the pillar of light. Zhuge Wanqiu looked at his departing figure in a daze, and faintly sighed. Senior brother, you really didn't have to do this. In the All Heavens Hall, Xiao Yan, Wang Lin, and the rest of the disciples congratulated Zhu Yi, congratulating him for having two of his disciples advance to the final third stage and obtain a place in the top 8. Although there were many twists and turns, in the end, Irosa still obtained the last place. Xiao Yan smiled. Second junior brother, congratulations. Zhu Yi smiled faintly. Quite a lot of tricks. Unconcerned, Xiao Yan smiled. Even if everything went according to plan, at most there would be some changes in the final ranking, but the candidates are basically as expected. Other than the dark horse from beyond Heaven Mountain, the top 8 is basically within our range of expectations. However, it is a pity that little junior brother's disciples, Little Huang and Wanqiu, third junior brother's disciple Xingluan, and Taishu Temple's disciple Fan Xiefeng are all people who have the strength to fight for the top 8. Wang Lin said, the first and second stages of the assessment set by Master are more likely to be accidental, but this is actually the test of the juniors' comprehensive strength, and also the best way to train them. The affairs of the world are always changing, and there will always be many accidents. Yu Hongyan smiled. However, the next third stage can finally let them breathe a sigh of relief. None of her disciples could advance to the third stage. Kujing was besieged in the Starry Sky Pagoda and accidentally touched the starlight circulation restriction, so she was forced to turn back and wasted too much time. As a result, her group did not manage to squeeze into the top 8 of the first stage and lost the qualification to participate in the second stage. Zhao Huan, on the other hand, was delayed because of guardian Zhou Yunsong. Although the two of them tried their best to catch up, in the end, they only managed to catch the last train and narrowly obtained the 8th place in the first stage, obtaining the qualification to enter the second stage. However, because they entered the miniature world too late, although Zhao Huan's strength was quite good, her starting point was still far behind the others. Until now, she had only just obtained her 4th golden ring. However, Yu Hongyan did not care too much about this. Her idea was very simple. She would find problems and oversights, learn from them, and go back to double the training of her disciples who loved to slack off. As Xiao Yan and the others teased each other, Li Yuanfang turned to look at Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled and nodded. Li Yuanfang used her transcendence energy to transmit her voice to Shi Tianhao, who was in charge of the spreading law hall. Tianhao, it's done. Shi Tianhao clasped his palms together, and a dozen light pillars immediately descended from the miniature world, covering the remaining people in it. Initially, there were almost 40 people who entered. After eliminating the top 8, there were less than 20 people left. There were also more than a dozen people who died in the miniature world. Some were besieged by Qiongqi at the beginning, and some were sent out when competing with other cultivators for the golden rings. When Ing Rosa came out of the miniature world, he found out that he was actually the 8th place. Not only was he not happy, but his expression was gloomy, especially when he found out that Su Yunxing was the 1st place. Ing Rosa's originally dark face turned even darker. Zhuge Wanqiu and the remaining people were sent out of the miniature world by Shi Tianhao. After understanding the situation, the group of Xianmen Tianzong disciples felt sorry for her. Zhuge Wanqiu, on the other hand, was more open-minded and did not care much. Instead, she even comforted Huang Zhenting. Everyone looked at the top 8, especially when they saw Zhou Yunsong and Chu Yang. Those who had not seen them before were extremely shocked. Su Yunxing, Dao Yuding, and the others also looked up and down at Zhou Yunsong. This was also the first time they knew that their junior brother Zhou was so hidden. Shi Tianhao came in front of everyone and said with a smile, "Let's first distribute the rewards for the second stage. Everyone in the top 8 will have a reward, but the rewards will be different. The higher the ranking, the better the reward." The most eye-catching reward was undoubtedly the Yuanying Realm magic tool that Su Yunxing had obtained. Many young cultivators in the spreading law hall looked at this scene enviously. Not to mention anything else, with this reward, even if Su Yunxing immediately forfeited the competition, he would have already earned a lot. On the other hand, although Su Yunxing and the other 7 people were also happy to obtain the generous reward, they all quickly put away their rewards and focused on Shi Tianhao. Their minds were now completely focused on the 3rd stage. What a joke, they had already reached this step. Who wouldn't want to be the person who came out on top in the end? Seeing this, Shi Tianhao smiled with satisfaction. The 8 of you have obtained the qualifications to advance to the 3rd stage. This time, it will not be difficult for you. The 3rd stage is the arena battle. The 8 of you will fight one-on-one, and the winner will advance. Previously, before the 2nd stage began, your final ranking in the 2nd stage will also affect the 3rd stage. Chapter 690. Shi Tianhao looked at Su Yunxing's group of 8 in front of him and formed a seal with both hands. With a change of magic power, the small world and the starry sky pagoda disappeared. The scene in front of everyone in the spreading law hall turned into an upper and lower space again. The lower space was still completely dark and not activated. Only the upper space was open to everyone. The top 8 of the 2nd stage will fight in reverse order according to the order of passing the test, Shi Tianhao said. The 1st will fight against the 8th, the 2nd will fight against the 7th, and so on. At the same time, the side with the higher ranking will have the right to decide the type of venue. Whether it was Su Yunxing's group of 8 or the spectating cultivators, they were all slightly moved when they heard this news. Compared to fighting in reverse order, the 2nd point was actually the biggest advantage for the side with the higher ranking. The cultivators participating in the spell gathering were all in the golden elixir period and foundation building stage. In the process of fighting, if one side had an obvious geographical advantage, it would greatly increase their strength and might even cause the balance of victory to be unbalanced. However, this was decided from the beginning, and it was also the reward that the winner of the 2nd stage deserved, so no one raised any objections. Everyone began to ponder. The 1st against the 8th, that senior brother Su against senior brother Ingroza? Huang Zhenting became spirited. The 2 of them are going against each other so quickly. This match is going to be interesting. A layer of worry appeared on Zhuge Wanqiu's face. Ingroza's previous gloominess was instantly swept away, and he became full of fighting spirit and spirit. Su Yunxing was still as calm as Mount Tai, and his expression did not change. The 2nd against the 7th, senior sister Yuding against the Beyond Sky Mountains, what's his name again? Huang Zhenting scratched his head in embarrassment. Zhuge Wanqiu came back to her senses and said, Chu Yang. Yes, senior sister Yuding against that Chu Yang from the Beyond Sky Mountain. Huang Zhenting nodded. The 3rd against the 6th in the central hall of the Cloud Peak, a youth silently looked at Lei Jia in the light and shadow illusion and murmured, the 3rd against the 6th, Taishu Temple's Chen Xingyu against the Lei clan's Lei Jia. 4th versus 5th, Tong versus Yun Song. In the All-Heaven Great Hall, Xiao Yan, who was talking cheerfully and wittily a moment ago, had a bitter expression on his face. Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, and the others also had helpless expressions on their faces as they looked at their eldest senior brother with sympathy. In the eyes of others, this last group was another civil war in Xianmen Tianzong. Many people were gloating. Xianmen Tianzong had set their own rules, and this time, they had dug a hole for themselves. There were many cultivators from various sects participating in this Dharma exchange. Although Xianmen Tianzong had the largest number of people as a single force, it was the minority overall. However, in the end, Xianmen Tianzong was still as strong as before. In the end, they occupied 5 spots in the top 8. Including Zhuge Wanqiu, Li Xingfei, Huang Zhenting, and the others who had the strength to make it to the top 8, Xianmen Tianzong might even have the chance to make it to the top 8. Such a domineering and strong performance was really eye-catching. It reminded Tao Master Chang'e, Huoxiu, Sword Master Solar, Sword Master Flowing Light, and the others of the Desolate Sea Dharma Assembly. In this Dharma exchange, Su Yunxing and the others did not display the overwhelming and despair-inducing might that Zhu Yi and Shi Tianhao did in the past. However, compared to the Desolate Sea Dharma Assembly, Xianmen Tianzong only had Zhu Yi and Shi Tianhao participating in the competition during the Golden Elixir period. In this Kunlun Mountain Dharma Assembly, Xianmen Tianzong showed an endless stream of talents and a strong and broad foundation. This brought a different kind of pressure to the other sections. However, because of the rules, although 5 people from Xianmen Tianzong advanced to the top 8, 2 internal fights broke out in the first round. Lin Feng looked at this scene with interest. He did not mind that 2 of his disciples were destined to be eliminated in the first round. Since the rules were set, everyone should abide by them. In general, the top 8 candidates were basically within his expectations. Unlike Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the others, who also regarded Chu Yang as an unexpected dark horse, Lin Feng had mentally predicted that Chu Yang would be in the top 8 when he first participated in the Dharma exchange. As for the specific ranking after the second stage and the final results of the Dharma assembly, it was hard to say. After all, there were many variables. In Lin Feng's expectations, Zhou Yunsong, Chen Xingyu, Chu Yang, Dao Yuding, Su Yunxing, and Ying Luozi were basically in the bag. Lin Tong, Huang Zhenting, Zhuge Wanqiu, Li Xingfei, Lei Jie, Fan Xiefeng, and Shi Jingyun competed for the remaining 2 spots. In the end, Lin Tong and Lei Jie successfully broke through. Lin Feng's expectations for Lin Tong and Huang Zhenting were slightly lower. It was not because he had no confidence in their abilities, but because their temperaments were unstable. Their performance fluctuated too much and was full of accidental factors. From a certain point of view, the great Qin dynasty's Shi Jingyun was also this type of person. Looking at the final results, Xiao Tong-er's luck was not bad. She had encountered 2 waves of people who came to her door with gifts, so she accepted them with a smile. Not only did she successfully advance, she even obtained 4th place. As for Huang Zhenting, he was the kind of person who encountered accident. However, Lin Tong's luck had also come to an end. In reality, after Zhou Yunsong successfully advanced to 5th place, the carefree Xiao Yan did not pay too much attention. However, Lin Feng was already shaking his head with a smile. In the top 8, Tong-er can actually put up a fight against anyone, but she's afraid of encountering Xiao Qingzi's disciple, Zhou Yunsong. Let Tong-er randomly pick 2 people from the top 8. It'll be easier for her to fight 1 against 2 than fighting Yunsong. This time, Lin Tong had encountered her nemesis. If there was one person in the top 8 who could definitely defeat her, it would be Zhou Yunsong. When she faced Zhou Yunsong, it was like the Taishu Temple disciple, Ding Runfeng, who had a pure yang body, encountered Zhou Yunsong. She was completely countered. Perhaps Zhou Yunsong himself did not care, but objectively speaking, the opponents he liked to meet the most were people like Lin Tong and Ding Runfeng. Cultivators who cultivated in fire-type Dao techniques and divine abilities needed to have at least 2 great true fires in hand. Relying on the complementary power of the 2 fires, only then would they be able to fight against Zhou Yunsong's burning yang body, who was at the same level. However, they would only not be countered. They would no longer be at a disadvantage, and could finally fight on equal grounds. Who would win and who would lose would involve many factors, and the outcome would only be known after they truly fought. However, the 7 great true fires were one of the most violent forces in the world, and it was very difficult for them to coexist in the same person's body. Cultivating more than one kind of true fire at the same time was easier said than done. Extraordinary talents like Xiao Yan were, after all, extremely rare. They also needed the support of a top-notch Dao technique like the Heavenly Dao Scripture. Even this Xiao Yan had suffered a lot when he cultivated it in the past. Little Lin Tong was talented and had a deep foundation, so there was some hope. However, if she, who was only at the foundation establishment stage and only had a pure yang true fire, went to fight with Zhou Yunsong, she would only be sending herself to death. If Tong and Yunsong were to fight against the third person, the difference in their performance wouldn't be too big. However, if the two of them were to fight against each other, the current Tong might lose. Lin Feng smiled and shook his head. It was precisely because of this that Xiao Yan couldn't help but frown. Yang Qing also smiled bitterly again and again, not knowing what to say. In the spreading law hall, Yan Wuwei, who didn't know the situation, was still muttering, "Junior Marshal Brother Zhou, that taciturn gourd, is really a real person who doesn't show his true colors. He actually made it into the top 8. When he first ascended the Starry Sky Pagoda, it was a lot later. However, don't look down on Junior Marshal Sister because she is young, she is very strong. Junior Marshal Brother Zhou shouldn't be her opponent. Our Burning Heaven Cliff disciples can make it into the top 4. Lu Xiaofeng, who was beside Yan Wuwei, turned his head and looked at him. His strange gaze made Yan Wuwei's hair stand on end. Lu Xiaofeng smiled bitterly and said, "Meeting Su Yunxing and Ing Luozha, meeting Senior Marshal Sister Yu Ting, and that Taishu Temple's Chen Xingyu. Hi, let's put it this way, no matter who she meets in the top 8, I have confidence in Junior Marshal Sister. Only meeting Yun Song, we can only blame our bad luck." Yan Wuwei was dumbfounded. "Brother Feng," Lu Xiaofeng said, "Junior Marshal Brother Zhou innately restrains cultivators who cultivate in Yang attribute Dao techniques. Whether it is my true Sun Fire or Junior Marshal Sister's pure Yang True Fire, it is the same." Yan Wuwei asked curiously, "Brother Feng, how do you know?" Lu Xiaofeng didn't answer but asked, "Haven't you been wondering that my strength didn't improve compared to the cave-dwelling competition 3 months ago? Instead, it has regressed?" Yan Wuwei nodded in confusion. Lu Xiaofeng opened his palm. "Not long ago, I pulled Junior Marshal Brother Zhou to compete with me. In the end, I suffered a crushing defeat. More than half of the true Sun Fire that I cultivated was destroyed by him. This was even under the situation where he desperately held back. Otherwise, I would have cultivated the great Sun Brilliant Heaven Dao Canon all these years for nothing." Yan Wuwei was dumbfounded and couldn't say a word. Shi Tianhao's voice continued to sound in his ears. "The third stage will naturally have a reward. The first place will be qualified to be baptized by the primordial starlight." As soon as this was said, the reaction was not very strong. Most people, including the 8 people in front of Shi Tianhao, had a confused expression on their faces. They didn't understand what this reward meant. Shi Tianhao didn't explain further and continued, "From the 2nd to the 4th place, the disciples of our sect will be given the opportunity to enter the Xiantian Eternal Light Grotto Heaven to cultivate. Fellow Taoists from other sects will be given the right to enter the Xiantian realm freely. Those who lose in the first round, don't be discouraged. There will be a reward too." Shi Tianhao smiled slightly. "Those who lose in the first round will be given a chance to challenge one of the 8 of us. You can choose any one of us. We can learn from each other's Dao technique. It can also be considered as helping each other." Shi Tianhao stuck out his thumb and pointed at his nose. He smiled and said, "For example, you can challenge me. All 4 of you can choose me and take turns." Shi Tianhao's words were polite, but the spreading law hall was instantly stirred. The fame of the direct disciple of the Profound Gates Master had already spread far and wide. Su Yunxing and the other 7 people didn't have much of a reaction. They were still aiming for the top 4. Not to mention the reward, the reputation was completely different. Only Chu Yang's eyes flickered slightly, and he was a little distracted. Chapter 691. Chu Yang's purpose in participating in this spell assembly was very clear. He wanted to show his face and leave an impression on everyone, especially on the celestial sect of Mystic Gate. This would make it easier for his Beyond Heaven Mountain and the celestial sect of Mystic Gate to deepen their relationship in the future. Since he wanted to leave an impression, he had to leave a good one. He had to be in the limelight and have a good reputation, but he couldn't let a guest steal the limelight. Chu Yang had his own pride as a person, and he was also hot-blooded and ambitious. However, his special experiences had made him more cool-headed and more pragmatic. He did not fight for a moment's fame. Thus, Chu Yang had a rough idea of what to do after participating in the spell assembly. It was about time for him to stop while he was ahead. Based on his performance in the second stage, he had already achieved his expected goal. After all, there were still many coincidental factors in the first and second stages. The third stage was a competition of strength, especially since his first opponent was the only golden elixir period cultivator of Xianmen Tianzong's second generation, Dao Yuding. She was very powerful. Whether or not he could beat her was another matter. If he really wanted to fight her head-on, Chu Yang would undoubtedly have to use his true skills. That wouldn't be something that could be deceived with 1 or 2 tokens, and he would definitely expose many of his secrets. With so many big shots watching from above, it was fine if Chu Yang didn't make a move, but once he did, there was no way he could hide it. In fact, Chu Yang had sufficient reason to suspect that even if it was just a few tokens, it might cause some people to think that they would rather kill the wrong person than let him go. Under such circumstances, continuing to be high-profile would only result in him courting death. Chu Yang had already considered everything before participating in the spell assembly, so he had to decisively hide his abilities. This had been Chu Yang's plan all along. Now, Shi Tianhao's announcement of the reward had brought him a pleasant surprise. A chance to challenge. Chu Yang took a deep breath and composed himself, stabilizing his state of mind. Shi Tianhao's gaze swept across the faces of the 8 people participating in the third stage. We'll proceed in reverse order. 4th and 5th step forward first. The others returned to their respective quiet rooms to rest and watch the battle, leaving only Lin Tong and Zhou Yunsong in the arena. The little girl looked curiously at her opponent. Those who already understood Zhou Yunsong's background looked at little Lin Tong with sympathy. The little girl's strength was outstanding, but unfortunately, she was a bit unlucky. In Marquis Jing Huan's private room, Xiang Heng and Wang Lu, who had already returned, stared at Zhou Yunsong. Xiang Heng said in a deep voice, "It seems to be this Zhou Yunsong, but I didn't expect him to join Yang Qing's sect instead of Xiao Yan's." Wang Lu nodded. "Actually, we should have thought of it. He's learning from Xiao Yan, so it's easier for him to go berserk, and his power will backfire on him." Marquis Jing Huan held a folding fan in his right hand. He closed it and lightly tapped it against his left palm. His eyes flashed. "So that's how it is. Is the burning Yang constitution what the Grandmaster wants? To be able to survive the spontaneous combustion of the burning Yang physique is indeed rare." He turned his head to look at Xiang Heng and Wang Lu. "What does Great Master need the blazing sun body for?" Xiang Heng and Wang Lu shook their heads. "To tell you the truth, Lord Marquis, we really don't know. We are only following the Grandmaster's orders." Pretending to be mysterious, "You've made this Marquis rather interested." Marquis Jing Huan chuckled, but it caused Xiang Heng and Wang Li's expressions to change. They knew that this Marquis was the epitome of a lawless person who did things without the slightest scruples. Marquis Jing Huan pointed at them with his folding fan and smiled. "Relax. This Marquis is just saying. I don't have the time to deal with such trivial matters. The great Zhou has been pressing me for the atlas. This Marquis's thoughts are all on this matter. It's giving me a headache." Although Marquis Jing Huan said this, there was no nervousness on his face. Xiang Heng and Wang Lu fell silent. After a long while, Wang Lu whispered, "The two of us are only responsible for running errands. I'm afraid we won't be able to bear the heavy responsibility of carrying Lord Marquis's words." Marquis Jing Huan smiled indifferently. Of course this Marquis knows. This Marquis will personally tell the Grandmaster about this matter. I have no intention of asking you to carry any messages. Whatever the Grandmaster orders you to do, just do it. However, if anything goes wrong, you will bear the consequences yourself. Xiang Heng and Wang Lu nodded. Of course. Their gazes once again focused on Zhou Yunsong in the arena, their eyes flashing. Su Yunxing returned to the Qiantian Hall's quiet room. Sun Shuer, Yang Tai, and the other disciples all congratulated him on taking first place in the second stage. Su Yunxing returned their greetings one by one before asking about the others. Inside the Starry Sky Pagoda and the small world, the cultivators participating in the spell assembly naturally had no way of knowing the overall situation. Senior brother Ing Rosa barely managed to take 8th place. In fact, he had already gathered all 10 golden rings. If nothing unexpected happened, he should be in the top 3. It's a pity that he spent too much time on senior sister Zhuge. Sun Shuer shook her head and sighed. It's also a pity for senior sister Zhuge. She was in 9th place, just a little bit away. After hearing this, Su Yunxing's expression did not change. After sitting for a while, he stood up and walked out of the room, arriving outside the desolate Sky Valley's quiet room. He did not open the door and stood outside like a statue. After a long silence, he finally turned around and left. Just as he turned around, he saw a gentle girl walking toward him. It was Zhuge Wanqiu. Zhuge Wanqiu saw Su Yunxing and was slightly stunned. Senior brother Su Yunxing opened his mouth and paused for a moment before saying softly, "It's a pity that you almost made it into the top 8. Yes, I still need to work hard." Zhuge Wanqiu replied with a smile and tilted her head slightly to look at Su Yunxing. Su Yunxing was silent for a moment before saying, "Everyone, let's work hard together." After saying that, he walked forward and brushed past Zhuge Wanqiu. The battle between junior brother Zhou and junior sister Lin is about to begin. Watch carefully and I believe you will gain something. Zhuge Wanqiu stood where she was and silently watched his back until Su Yunxing disappeared from her sight. After a long while, she shook her head and sighed softly. She turned around and returned to the quiet room. Su Yunxing also returned to the room where the Qian Tian Palace disciples gathered. As soon as he entered, he saw Ing Rosa sitting there and staring intently at Zhou Yunsong and Lin Tong in the illusion of light and shadow. Su Yunxing looked at Ing Rosa and his eyes moved slightly, but he quickly regained his calmness. Junior sister Lin Tong chose such a place as the battlefield. Her strength must have increased by at least 50%. Ing Rosa suddenly said without turning his head, "In such an environment, neither you nor I are her match." Su Yunxing looked up and saw that the arena had already turned into a sea of pure white flames. The flames were blazing and the aura was monstrous. Lin Tong was ranked 4th while Zhou Yunsong was ranked 5th. Thus, Lin Tong was the one who decided the environment of the arena. The little girl did not hold back at all and directly turned the entire arena into a sea of pure yang fire. Su Yunxing nodded. "In such an environment, I am not junior sister Lin Tong's match. But I feel that junior sister Lin Tong is most likely going to lose." Sun Shuer mumbled. Su Yunxing and Ing Rosa looked at her strangely. Sun Shuer hurriedly told them about Zhou Yunsong's previous performance, especially how his burning sun vitality breaker destroyed Yang Likuan's red lotus karmic fire like boiling soup splashing snow. Su Yunxing and Ing Rosa looked at each other and then at Yang Tai and the others. They saw the group of junior brothers nodding in unison. In the All Heavens Great Hall, Lin Feng could not help but shake his head and laugh when he saw Lin Tong choose this arena. "My little Tong you're really too naive." Xiao Yin also smiled bitterly. However, the two of them did not remind Lin Tong in advance. The little girl's temperament was immature and innocent. If she walked outside, it would be very easy for her to suffer losses. So, they just treated this as giving her some experience. Sure, Tianhao was watching from the side. Even if Zhou Yunsong used the burning sun vitality breaker, there would not be any big accident. The development of the situation was not out of Lin Feng and his disciples' expectations. Little Lin Tong had hit a wall. Zhou Yunsong's violent burning sun vitality breaker was fighting against her pure yang fire. With Lin Tong's home ground advantage, it was difficult for her to make any progress in a short time. However, he only released a little bit of the burning sun vitality breaker's aura, which immediately caused the little girl's beautiful face to turn pale. The little girl did not have much experience in fighting with others, but she was very talented. She was extremely sensitive to the concept of the burning sun vitality breaker's power. Like a mouse seeing a cat, or a rabbit seeing a wolf, she felt the pressure of a natural enemy. A black light flashed on Zhou Yunsong's body, which immediately destroyed a large part of the sea of pure yang fire in the arena. Such a large-scale destruction of the fire made the power of his burning sun vitality breaker further increase, and there were even faint signs of it going out of control. Lin Tong's own pure yang fire was not damaged. She could clearly feel her helplessness in facing this opponent, so she could only unwillingly admit defeat. It was only at this moment that the cultivators who participated in the second stage truly saw how terrifying Zhou Yunsong was. Although there was a natural restraint factor, Zhou Yunsong's strong performance still made everyone feel pressure. Rosa's eyes were fixed on Zhou Yunsong in the arena, and he did not speak for a long time. Su Yunxing's gaze was not as aggressive as Rosa's, but all of his attention was on Zhou Yunsong, and he kept imagining what would happen if he were in Lin Tong's position. Rosa, do you know what I'm thinking right now? Suddenly, Su Yunxing used his transcendence energy to transmit his voice to Rosa. Rosa did not move, and his eyes were still fixed on Zhou Yunsong. Su Yunxing did not mind and said to himself, I'm thinking that you and I are both very laughable. Rosa was silent. He understood what Su Yunxing meant. Ever since they entered the sect, the two of them had been constantly fighting for the position of number one among the second-generation disciples. In fact, they had always been the two most outstanding second-generation disciples, and they could be said to be the brightest of time. Rosa was even more arrogant, and he did not care about Li Xingfei, Lu Xiaofeng, and the others. Among the cultivators of the same generation, he had always set his sights on Su Yunxing. On the other hand, although Su Yunxing was usually modest and polite, he was also extremely arrogant. Disregarding other aspects, just in terms of cultivation, how could he not view Rosa as his only rival? This situation continued until Dao Yuding entered the sect, but Dao Yuding was already in the late stage of foundation establishment the moment she entered the sect. Her situation was very special, and although Su Yunxing and Rosa respected her, they did not think that they were inferior to Dao Yuding at the same level. Although little Lin Tong had been specially nurtured by Lin Feng and Xiao Yan to be able to cultivate the Tao of the human race, he was still a spirit monster, and his situation was also special. But today, Zhou Yunsong's appearance had a huge impact on Su Yunxing and Rosa. Inside the All Heavens Palace, Zhu Yi swept out with his divine sense and discovered the shocked state of his disciples. Chapter 692. Zhu Yi could easily understand what Su Yunxing and Rosa were thinking. Zhou Yunsong's dominance not only hit the confidence of the young cultivators from the other forces, but also hit his own fellow disciples. This was also a test for Su Yunxing and Rosa. If they could stabilize their state of mind, adjust their mentality, and turn the pressure into motivation, they might be able to take a step further, dig out more potential, and look forward to a higher future. Therefore, whether it was Lin Feng or Zhu Yi, they were actually happy to see this happen. As one of the people involved, Zhou Yunsong didn't feel anything about it. Right now, all his energy was used to suppress his mana that was about to go out of control again. Fortunately, Shi Tianhao was right next to him and could give him a hand. Meanwhile, little Lin Tong was like an eggplant that had been hit by frost. She listlessly came to the quiet room where Xiao Zhen'er was. As soon as she entered the room, she was like an injured little beast as she softly said, "Mother! Tong-er lost." Xiao Zhen'er smiled and pulled her into her arms. "It's just a spar between fellow disciples, don't worry about the outcome." Little Lin Tong pouted. "I still want to enter the top 4 and bring glory to Daddy." Xiao Zhen'er scratched her little nose and said with a smile, "No matter what your results are, Big Brother Xiao Yan and I will be proud of you. We never give you any pressure, we just want you to live a relaxed and happy life." And little Tong-er snuggled in Xiao Zhen'er's arms and comfortably twisted her little body. Suddenly, she remembered something. "Oh right, Tong-er still has to challenge someone later." "Mother, which uncle do you think I should challenge?" Xiao Zhen'er said with a smile. "That's up to you to decide." Lin Tong's big black and white eyes rolled around as many thoughts flashed through her little brain. At the same time, Shi Tianhao had already announced the start of the second round of quarterfinals. The two participants were Chen Xingyu from Taishu Temple and Lei Jie from Lei Clan, who had obtained 3rd and 6th place respectively in the second stage of the Dharma Assembly. Inside the All Heavens Great Hall, Lin Feng revealed an interested expression when he saw this scene. This is the only duel that I can't predict before the duel officially starts. Chen Xingyu has a higher chance of winning, but Lei Jie isn't that bad either." Inside the spreading law hall, the cultivators of the various forces were also in heated discussion. Lei Jie's strength was relatively more obvious. He had climbed the Starry Sky Pagoda alone, then killed Qiongqi in the Lesser World, and defeated the Heavenly Sword Sect's swordsman Kong Hai with an overwhelming advantage. On the other hand, Chen Xingyu didn't seem to be particularly outstanding. Along the way, there was nothing particularly outstanding about him. But when they carefully thought about Chen Xingyu's path of advancement, they felt that it was extremely frightening to think about it. In the first stage, his group, Su Yunxing's group, and Ying Rose's group had left the other groups far behind. They were the first to reach the top of the pagoda. If it wasn't for the fact that his group members had an accident and accidentally touched the starlight restriction, it was still a mystery which group would have obtained first place in the first stage. In the second stage, he didn't have any conflicts with anyone. He simply hunted Qiongqi and collected 10 golden rings. He fought his way into the top 3, just behind Su Yunxing and Dao Yuding. He didn't let Xianmen Tianzong have the upper hand. In a sense, Chen Xingyu's performance in the second stage was the most outstanding. The Dharma Assembly allowed cultivators to compete for the golden rings, which made the results more random. Kong Hai's experience was the most illustrative. In a short period of time, the number of golden rings he had went from 3 to 10, and then quickly dropped to 5. The ups and downs were more exciting than a roller coaster. Zhou Yunsong was the last group to enter the pocket dimension, and he passed the test in 5th place. The key was that he had obtained both Li Xingfei and Yang Likuan's golden rings at the same time. He had originally only had 1 golden ring, but now he had 8, which helped him make up for the time he had wasted in the first stage. There was no need to mention Chu Yang. He had obtained 9 golden rings at once, and in addition to the one he had hidden at the beginning, he had immediately made up the number. And Chen Xingyu was the only one in the top 8 who hadn't snatched anyone's golden ring, nor had anyone snatched it from him. He had used the most primitive and original method of obtaining golden rings, which was to hunt Qiongqi to complete the task. His advancement was the least random, and on this basis, he had obtained 3rd place. From a certain point of view, he was very valuable, but it was also because he had never fought with anyone, and when he hunted Qiongqi, he had only found lone Qiongqi and hadn't displayed much of his strength. That was why his true strength was a mystery. Everyone was curious about the level of this disciple of Taishu Temple. Lei Jie, the young master of the Lei family, who was also known as the young heaven's favored one, was believed to be able to make Chen Xingyu reveal his true strength. Dressed in white, the extraordinarily handsome Chen Xingyu looked at Lei Jie silently. He smiled and cupped his hands. "Brother Lei, please." He was third in the second stage, so he had the right to choose the battlefield's environment. But Chen Xingyu didn't make any special requests. He just wanted to fight Lei Jie in an ordinary battlefield, which showed his extraordinary bearing and confidence. Lei Jie didn't stand on ceremony. He put his palms together and green lightning emerged from his body. They turned into an overwhelming lightning snake that fell toward Chen Xingyu's head. 2 streams of air, one black and one white, rushed out from Chen Xingyu's body. They intertwined and turned into a whirlpool that spun continuously, producing a great suction force that sucked in the green lightning. Lei Jie raised his eyebrows and changed his hand seals. The green lightning that was sucked in by the black and white whirlpool quickly gathered. Instead of being disintegrated by the whirlpool, it turned into a huge ball of lightning. The ball of lightning didn't crackle with electricity. Instead, it was like a ball of green gas that kept vibrating. The next moment, the green ball of lightning exploded and shattered the black and white whirlpool. Inside the All-Heaven Hall, Tao Master Lei Yun's expression was calm. He nodded. The chaotic whole immortal slaying thunder. It is indeed the great chaotic interior true thunder scripture of the Grand Emperor's bloodline. It was said that when the Grand Emperor ruled the divine land, he was so majestic that even Essence Soul Almighties had to come and pay homage. Anyone who disobeyed would be killed with green lightning. Lin Feng smiled. When he first saw the Grand Emperor Palace in the cloudy forest world, the Grand Emperor Palace had released the chaotic whole immortal slaying thunder to face its enemies. Lei Jie's cultivation was only in the Golden Elixir period, so he naturally couldn't compare to the Grand Emperor Palace's power. However, the thunder technique he cultivated was indeed from the Grand Emperor's lineage. The chaotic whole immortal slaying thunder had just revealed its extraordinary power. Even when facing the Taishu Temple's lineage, Chen Xingyu, it didn't seem to be at a disadvantage. Chen Xingyu looked at the chaotic whole immortal slaying thunder and smiled. He pointed with his index finger, and black and white auras appeared one after another, turning into black and white whirlpools. Lei Jie also released one green mass after another, which collided with the black and white whirlpools. Chen Xingyu suddenly waved his hand, and the black and white whirlpools in front of him shattered abruptly, merging into 2 majestic air currents that were like 2 raging dragons. They shattered Lei Jie's chaotic whole immortal slaying thunder one by one, and then blasted toward Lei Jie himself. Lei Jie's body was covered in green lightning, as if a thunder god had descended to the world. Bolts of lightning were released, turning his surroundings into a lightning hell, blocking the black and white auras outside. Both of them were in the Golden Elixir period, so in a one-on-one battle, the Greater Law Hall wouldn't suppress their realms, allowing both of them to unleash their full strength. Their strength also dazzled the other cultivators in the Greater Law Hall. Both of them were only testing their strength, but they had already displayed impressive strength. Even the Yuanian cultivators had to treat them seriously. As the battle reached its climax, Lei Jie let out a thunderous roar, and his entire body shone brightly. 9 majestic air currents continuously revolved around his body, and his aura rose. The 9 air currents wrapped in rolling lightning intertwined in midair, condensing and manifesting, gradually condensing into a huge human figure, as if a thunder god had descended to the world. This human figure wasn't an illusion, but a true manifestation of magic power, condensed into a solid body, somewhat similar to the heaven and earth aspect condensed by late Yuanian cultivators. Seeing this scene, even the nascent divinity experts in the All-Heaven Great Hall were slightly moved. Emperor Qin Shi Yu nodded. The 9-Qi true thunder body is indeed extraordinary. Late Yuanian cultivators had a huge leap in strength compared to middle Yuanian cultivators, and the key was that the heaven and earth aspect condensed the essence of the Tao. Right now, Lei Jie was only in the golden elixir period, but he already had such a technique. Although it was still different from the heaven and earth aspect, it was undoubtedly a qualitative change in his combat strength. In the battle, Chen Xingyu's expression did not change, and the yin and yang qi around him formed an unprecedented huge vortex. More and more yin and yang magic power merged into it, and gradually, the world seemed to be separated, turning into two parts, one above and one below, sandwiching Lei Jie and the huge human figure that he had manifested in the middle. The two discs rotated in the opposite direction, like a huge millstone, wanting to grind everything in the middle into powder. With yin and yang as the pushing force, and with the world as the millstone, it crushed everything. Taishu Temple's void yin-yang Dao's top magic power, yin-yang grind, heaven and earth grind. Those who recognized this Dharma spell immediately could not sit still. This Dharma spell was far more powerful than ordinary magic powers, and should not have appeared in the golden elixir period. 3 years ago in West Hill City, the Taishu Temple's direct disciple Bai Shiqian had used this move, and it had shocked everyone. Unfortunately, in the end, she was still defeated by Xianmen Tianzong Yu Hongyan. However, that was not because the yin-yang grind, heaven and earth grind was weak, but because Bai Shiqian's combat talent was much weaker than Yu Hongyan's. Even Xianmen Tianzong and the others would not underestimate this powerful Dharma spell. They're both in the golden elixir period. This Chen Xingyu's Dharma spell is much stronger than Bai Shiqian's. As the person with the most right to speak, Yu Hongyan stared at Chen Xingyu for a moment, then said slowly, "When Bai Shiqian uses this Dharma spell, it's like a child playing with 1,000 caddy sledgehammer. But when he uses it, he has already grasped the essence of it. It's as if he can control it with ease." Beside her, Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi and the others nodded. Xiao Yan smiled. The other sects have indeed sent out their best disciples for this year's Dharma assembly. Although Lei Jie had also sensed Chen Xingyu's strength, his fighting spirit did not diminish. The giant lightning god above his head let out a deafening roar as it faced the yin-yang grind, heaven and earth grind head-on. For a moment, both sides were locked in a stalemate. The spectators sighed in admiration that Lei Jie was also extraordinary. He was fighting against the direct disciple of the Taishu Temple and was not at a disadvantage at all. But at this moment, Lei Jie's gaze suddenly trembled. A look of anger flashed across his usually calm and proud face. "No. Impossible. I'm the one who succeeded." Chapter 693. Lei Jie took a deep breath, as if he had made some sort of decision. The statue of the giant lightning god above his head suddenly disintegrated. No one had expected this. The smile on Lei Lai's face disappeared, and the light in his eyes intensified as he stared at Lei Jie. Chen Xingyu, who was fighting Lei Jie, did not take advantage of the situation to kill him. Instead, he retracted his yin-yang crushing world grinder and looked calmly at Lei Jie. Lei Jie's expression had completely returned to its cold and calm state. He said lightly, "I forfeit this round." Great Law Hall was in an uproar, and the Lei family disciples were even more shocked. They did not understand why Lei Jie would suddenly forfeit. Many of the Yuanying ancestors of the Lei family also looked at Lei Jie in astonishment. They knew very well that Lei Jie, who possessed the 9-Qi true thunder body, was still holding back even now. Of course, Chen Xingyu's strength might not be at its limit, but the two sides were still evenly matched. If the fight continued, Lei Jie still had a chance. Not to mention his final ranking in Xianmen Tianzong's assembly, just defeating a core disciple of Taishu Temple would be enough to make Lei Jie's name spread far and wide. He would thoroughly secure the title of a young heavens chosen and become one of the best of the younger generation in the divine land. Lei Lai, the patriarch, knew that deep in his heart, his proud descendant had always been unconvinced that the dual-pupiled Shi Tianyi had suppressed him. After Shi Tianyi had been defeated by Shi Tianhao, Lei Jie's goal had naturally shifted to Shi Tianhao. Lei Jie was participating in the Dharma assembly this time to aim for the last place. Based on Lei Lai's understanding of him, Lei Jie would not purposely seek defeat in order to gain the chance to challenge Shi Tianhao. That kind of fight, which was obviously a senior giving pointers to a junior, was not something the proud Lei Jie would accept. He wanted to first subdue the second-generation disciples of Xianmen Tianzong, and then challenge Shi Tianhao openly. Therefore, even if he were to forfeit his battle with Chen Xingyu, he would never use his right to challenge Shi Tianhao or Shi Tianhao's fellow disciples. It was because of his deep understanding of Lei Jie that Lei Lai was especially shocked. He didn't know why Lei Jie would suddenly forfeit. Lei Jie's face was as calm as still water. He was well aware of his family's restlessness. If he gave up, it would be meaningless for him to participate in the spell assembly. Most people would only think that he was afraid to fight. He did not have the confidence or even the courage to fight against Chen Xingyu of the Taishu Temple. Not only would it not increase his reputation, but it would also damage Lei Jie's previous reputation. Lei Jie was well aware of the consequences, but after a brief moment of consideration, he finally decided to forfeit. Stopping or even retreating now is for the sake of moving forward. Lei Jie did his best to calm himself down. This time, we must completely solve this problem. I'm a success. In the central hall of Cloud Peak, a group of Foundation disciples of Xianmen Tianzong sat together to watch the process of the spell assembly. When someone saw Lei Jie forfeit, he couldn't help but purse his lips. What's going on? He clearly doesn't look like he's going to lose. Maybe he knows in his heart that he's not a match for him, so he doesn't want to lose too badly. What do you think, Tang Jun? Suddenly, someone asked a young man beside him. You're at the Foundation establishment stage, so your cultivation is higher than ours. You should be able to see more, right? The young man called Tang Jun's eyes were like lightning as he stared closely at Lei Jie in the illusion of light and shadow. He said lightly, I don't know either. The person beside him muttered softly, but you really look like him. If it wasn't for the fact that one of you has the surname Lei and the other has the surname Tang, I would have thought you were brothers. Tang Jun's hand suddenly clenched into a fist, then slowly loosened. He laughed, but didn't say anything. Within the All Heavens Hall, the head of the Lei family Lei Lai seemed to have calmed down, smiling towards Lin Daohan and Yan Mingyue. Your sect's great disciples are dragons among dragons. My grandson has shown his incompetence. The Marquis of Xuanjizhu Hongwu, who had been very quiet since the beginning of the spell assembly, suddenly sent him a sound transmission. Now it looks like your grandson won't do. We still have to see what the situation is like with the other one. Lei Lai's gaze moved, replying as if nothing had happened. Marquis of Xuanji, don't be impatient. I'll ask Lei Jie later, and we'll know the exact situation. The primordial spirit big shots of the other powers all congratulated Lin Daohan. Fellow Lin has a successor, congratulations. Lin Feng also looked at him and said with a smile, a great teacher produces a great disciple, the ancients did not deceive me. I can't compare to the master of the Xian Gate and his great disciple. Lin Daohan bowed slightly, his tone calm. My disciple still has many areas that he needs to train in. After entering your sect's Xian Tian realm, if he offends you in any way, please forgive him. Chen Xingyu has already entered the top 4, at the very least he can obtain the right to freely enter and exit the Xian Tian realm. Of course, this freedom of entry and exit must be established under conscious conditions. If he enters and loots all kinds of rare treasures, or excavates some precious mineral vein in one go, then Xianmen Tianzong will definitely not allow him to enter and not leave. Lin Feng smiled. Perhaps in the end it will be a chance for your disciple to obtain the primordial starlight baptism. Yan Mingyue smiled slightly. Sect leader Lin is too polite. No matter what, I have to thank sect leader Lin for taking out such a generous reward. The power of the stars is so powerful that even a primordial spirit powerhouse can't easily control it. Even if there is a way to guide the starlight, it is extremely violent and can easily kill people. The Dharma spells of the Taishu Temple, the divine light of the gathering stars in the 9 heavens of Taishu scripture, is a similar Dharma spell. The more powerful Dharma spells like the 9 glory sky shattering formation are even more destructive. It is very difficult to guide the starlight to temper one's body. Since ancient times, only the demon powerhouses who have cultivated to the primordial true spirit realm can naturally guide the power of the stars to cultivate with the secret method of the demon race. It is extremely difficult for human cultivators. Only the desolate ancient star sea that is controlled by the demon race at the moment is endless and mysterious, guiding the endless starlight like a zone where human cultivators can also guide the starlight to temper their body. Lin Feng has control of the foreign dimension that is a projection of the desolate ancient star sea, so he can draw a small amount of primordial starlight to temper the body and soul of his disciples. However, the foreign dimension is only a projection of the desolate ancient star sea. It is created by Xia Huang's magical treasure of creation, Ding of Shenzhou. It is not a real realm passage that leads to the desolate ancient star sea, so the starlight that can be guided is still limited. At the same time, although the baptism of the primordial starlight is much gentler, there is still a certain requirement for the person who can bear the power of the stars. Only those who are outstanding can bear the power of the stars and go to the next level. Even under Xianmen Tianzong, only a portion of people can bear it. Even so, the starlight is very limited. Since Lin Feng is willing to take out this thing as a reward for the spell gathering, even people like Lin Daohan and Yan Mingyue from the Taishu Temple and Emperor Qin Shi Yu from the Great Qin Dynasty expressed their approval. The thunderous swordsman sighed. Speaking of which, none of the 7 seas of heaven origin is completely controlled by us human cultivators. As soon as he said this, the big shots immediately nodded in agreement. The so-called 7 seas of heaven origin are the Star Sea, the Empty Sea, the Nether Sea, the Mysterious Sea, the Ing Sea, the Spirit Sea, and the Dead Sea. They are all outside of the great heaven origin world, but they are different from the medium-class world. They are giant foreign dimensions that are even bigger than medium-class worlds. The Star Sea is the desolate ancient Star Sea. In the immemorial age, it was the paradise of the demon race. In the ancient age, it was occupied by the human race and became the residence of the human sovereign. In the last years of the ancient age, it was retaken by the demon race. Until now, it is still controlled by the demon race. The empty sea is actually the void battlefield. It is filled with space turbulence and void storms. The human race and the demon race often enter it to search for treasures. No one can say that it is controlled by the demon race. The Nether Sea is the Netherworld underground sea. According to folklore, it is the location of the Netherworld underground sea. It is filled with all kinds of ferocious disasters. The true water of the Netherworld and the true water of the blood river of the true water of the 6 great true water, the evil Hades, the mysterious heavenly tribulation flame, and the red lotus karmic fire of the 7 great true fires, and the 9 nether wind of the 4 great divine winds all originate from there. The Nether Sea is in a closed state. There is no complete realm passage connecting it to the divine land or infinite wilderness land. There are only occasional cracks, but they are fleeting, appearing and healing quickly. The true water of the Netherworld, the true water of the Blood River, the evil Hades, and other disasters leak out from the cracks at this time, poisoning the world. The Dark Sea is only connected to infinite wilderness land. It is not in contact with the divine land at all. It is now the habitat of the dragon race. The Ing Sea is connected to the divine land. It is located in the depths of the sea in the east of the Great Zhou dynasty. It is also known as the Phantom Sea. There are many strange phenomena and mysterious things there. There are many illusions. Compared to the void battlefield, it is not as violent, but more mysterious and unpredictable. It is also a place of great danger. There are many primordial spirit cultivators who are trapped there and cannot come out again, let alone those below the primordial spirit stage. Many powerful beings in the Divine Land have tried to explore the Ing Sea. However, like the Void battlefield, they have some gains, but they are far from completely controlling it. Logically speaking, just like how the Mystic Ocean was to Tianhuang mainland and the Ing Ocean was to the Divine Continent, the cultivation world of the human race should be considered their own backyard. However, the awkward thing was that there was a realm passageway on the eastern sea of the Divine Continent that was connected to the Tianhuang mainland. Thus, the demon race did not need to spend too much effort to go to the Ing Ocean. For the passage to the Ing Sea, the two races have often fought. The Great Zhou dynasty has many cultivators stationed at the sea to guard the realm passage to infinite wilderness land to prevent the demon race from entering. The Spirit Sea and Dead Sea are relatively mysterious, and they are even harder to find than the Netherworld Sea. Celestial Sword Sovereign suddenly said, "Speaking of which, it seems that it is almost time for the Ing Sea's 3 mountains to appear. It is said that by controlling the 3 mountains, one can truly control the entire Ing Sea. I wonder if this is true?" Hearing this, both Emperor Qin Xiu and Great Zhou's Marquis Xuanji Zhu Hongwu frowned. Songhai Sword Sovereign Emerald Wave was expressionless and looked towards Celestial Sword Sovereign. Celestial Sword Sovereign only smiled slightly and did not say anything. Yan Mingwei had a faint smile on her face, while Lin Daohan sighed softly. Lin Feng looked at this scene with interest and laughed in his heart. Ing Sea's 3 mountains, interesting. Chapter 694. Lin Feng had some understanding of the legends of the 3 mountains of Ing Ocean. As long as it wasn't a special secret, he would be able to obtain it through the system. The 3 mountains of Ing Ocean were Penglai, Ingzhou, and Fangzhong. Legend had it that they were the 3 immortal mountains or 3 immortal islands that floated above Ing Ocean. The illusory realms of the 3 immortal mountains had always been hidden in the depths of Ing Ocean, appearing and disappearing from time to time. In ancient times, there was once an almighty who mistakenly entered the immortal mountain and escaped. However, he died not long after he left the Ing Sea. Before he died, he left a key message saying that whoever could control the 3 mountains of the Ing Sea would be able to truly control the Ing Sea. After hearing that, the Grand Emperor, who was the human emperor at that time, immediately entered Ing Ocean. After a long time, he returned from Ing Ocean. Although he didn't gain anything, he confirmed that the rumor was true. Not only did the Grand Emperor confirm the rumor, but he also broke the many dermic power restrictions of the 3 immortal mountains. As a result, the 3 immortal mountains that were originally unpredictable would appear after a fixed period of time. However, their locations would still change randomly. As far as Lin Feng knew, the next appearance of the 3 mountains should be in the next 1 to 2 years. In a sense, it was all thanks to the Grand Emperor that the future generations had a clear hope of obtaining the 3 mountains of Ing Ocean. Although the future generations had yet to appear, people's understanding of Ing Ocean and the 3 mountains had increased since ancient times. The chances of truly controlling the immortal mountains were getting higher and higher. Of course, there were still great difficulties and risks. In the past, the Grand Emperor's cultivation level had fallen into a low after returning from Ing Ocean. As a result, he died in the following war between the 2 worlds. After the Grand Emperor, all the almighty experts who had substantial contact with the 3 mountains of Ing Ocean had suffered heavy losses, and many of them had died. With the efforts of the generations, the veil that shrouded the 3 immortal mountains was peeled off layer by layer. In the recent 1,000 years, the fog that covered the truth was finally about to dissipate. Without a doubt, the powerful force that was closest to the Inghai Ocean was the Great Zhou Empire. Just like the empty ocean, Star Sea, and Dark Sea, Even though there were numerous dangers in the Hawk Ocean, it was an enormous treasury that was practically boundless, and it was filled with various treasures that were rare or even unique in other places of the heaven primal world. It attracted batch after batch of cultivators to fight to enter the Hawk Ocean to search for them, even if they had to risk their lives. If he could gain complete control of this place, he would no longer have to fear the dangers within it, and he would be able to take whatever he wanted from this boundless treasure vault. Then, the growth of his strength would undoubtedly be explosive. In the All-Heaven Grand Hall, although the group of Essence Soul powerhouses did not speak, a large number of spiritual will and dermic powers were communicating. The matter regarding the 3 mountains of Yingxi was not a secret. Most of the people present basically knew about it and knew that the 3 mountains were about to appear again. However, everyone restrained themselves. After all, there were many risks in the Yingxi. Even Essence Soul experts were not safe in there. But at this moment, in the All-Heaven Grand Hall on Yujing Mountain, everyone was calculating whether Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong would also join in. If Xianmen Tianzong joined in, how big of an impact would it be? The last time the 3 mountains of Yingxi appeared, Xianmen Tianzong still did not exist, and no one in the world knew of Lin Feng's existence. But now, with the influence of Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong, all of this had to be taken into consideration. Sword Venerable Emerald Wave and Lei Family Head Lei Lai expressionlessly watched this scene. On the contrary, the number 2 person of the great Zhou dynasty, the Marquis of Xuanji Zhu Hongwu, was very relaxed. His expression did not change as he calmly sat on the chair. After glancing at Sword Venerable Celestial, his gaze landed on Lin Feng and Lin Daohan. Sword Venerable Celestial exposing the 3 mountains of Yingxi undoubtedly had the intention of instigating internal strife among the united front of Xianmen Tianzong, Great Zhou, and Great Qin. Lin Feng still had a faint smile on his face. He was calm and composed without any change. After the initial sigh, Lin Daohan's expression was also as calm as before. Zhu Hongwu looked at them and nodded his head with an unknown meaning. Then he retracted his gaze and was still as calm as Mount Tai, as if nothing had happened. Lin Feng sat on the main seat and smiled in his heart. Interesting. I wonder how Penglai, Yingzhou, and Fangzhong Mountain compare to my Yujing Mountain? In the All-Heaven Grand Hall, the group of Essence Soul experts were thinking about the 3 mountains of Yingxi. Meanwhile, the spell-gathering competition in the Spreading Law Hall was still in full swing. After the match between Chen Xingyu and Lei Jie, the 2 sides of the battle became the second stage's second place Dao Yuding and the 7th place Chu Yang. No matter if it was Dao Yuding herself or her master Wang Lin, they were both pragmatists. They believed that the ultimate goal of a fight was to defeat or even kill the enemy. So if they had an advantage, they had to use it. She directly chose a world of ice and snow as the location for the competition. Cultivating with Wang Lin, during the process of cultivation, not only did Dao Yuding cultivate the spells and spells of Xianmen Tianzong, she also fused the original spells and spells of Heavenly Lake Sect together, reaching a higher level. Actually, you really don't have to do this. Just choose a location that's good for me to perform, and the result won't change, although you don't know which location is suitable for me to perform. Chu Yang secretly curled his lips and used the spells of Beyond Sky Mountain to fight Dao Yuding. Although he had made up his mind to hide his strength, he did not perform too badly. He displayed many of his unique understanding of spells and spells, which made the spectators from Beyond Sky Mountain and the cultivators from other forces secretly nod their heads. However, as Chu Yang said, no matter how the process was, the result would not change. Putting aside the fact that his opponent was Dao Yuding, who was an outstanding second-generation successor disciple of Xianmen Tianzong, as long as his opponent was a normal cultivator and not a pig, Chu Yang would still be able to lose to her. It was just that the method of losing was different. As long as one had the heart to win, one could lose no matter what. The solution was always more difficult than the solution. Facing an expert was one way of losing, and facing a rookie was another way of losing. Therefore, although Chu Yang was defeated in the end, the spectators did not look down on him too much. After all, even though he had made it to the top 8, many people still thought that he was the weakest of the top 8, and he was labeled as a one-round loser. Now that he had displayed a certain level of strength and regrettably lost, many people who had lower expectations of him acknowledged his performance. Although he was not a dark horse to the very end, at least he was of a good quality. Before this, many of the younger cultivators were rather dissatisfied with Chu Yang. They thought that he had only made it this far by relying on luck and petty trick. In the first stage of the Tower Challenge, his teammates were all quite strong. As long as he ensured that he did not drag them down, he could easily pass the first stage of the assessment. In the second stage, Chu Yang stood out. However, the fact that he managed to gather 9 golden rings in one go still made many people feel that his luck was off the chart. There were some more subtle psychological games that not everyone could see. In particular, many of the young cultivators from the Scarlet Cloud sect disliked Chu Yang no matter how they looked at him. The Scarlet Cloud sect and Beyond Heaven Mountain were both well-known mid-sized forces in the southern foothills of the Kunlun Mountains. After the destruction of the Wind God sect, the Scarlet Cloud sect immediately approached Xianmen Tianzong. Xianmen Tianzong did not mistreat the Scarlet Cloud sect either. Among the first batch of external forces to enter the Xianmen realm, other than the large forces like the Great Qin, the Thunderbolt Sword sect, the Celeritas Sword sect, and the Purple Cloud Path, the Scarlet Cloud sect was one of the few mid-sized forces that took precedence over Beyond Heaven Mountain. In recent years, Beyond Heaven Mountain had gradually separated from Shushan and approached Xianmen Tianzong. The Scarlet Cloud sect was undoubtedly the most hostile towards them. Both parties were not on good terms in the first place. Now that Beyond Heaven Mountain had come to snatch their number 1 follower position, the Scarlet Cloud sect was naturally unhappy. The Scarlet Cloud sect thought that they had the merit of helping them rise to the top. Originally, they had the attitude of looking down on their old rival. After considering the cultivation and talent of their own successor, the Scarlet Cloud sect, who felt that it was better to hide their incompetence than to show their incompetence, did not send their disciples to participate in the Dharma assembly. They even secretly mocked Beyond Heaven Mountain for sending Chu Yang. In the end, Chu Yang had actually made it to the top 8. Instantly, the young cultivators of the Scarlet Cloud sect looked at their master and grandmaster with resentment. Even the trash from Beyond Heaven Mountain could make it to the top 8, but they could only squat here and watch like quails. This made them feel as if their hearts were being scratched by cats. It was only until the battle with Dao Yuding in the third stage. Although Chu Yang had been defeated, he had more or less shown that he was the real deal. Only then did some of the people feel a little better. Therefore, the cultivators of the Scarlet Cloud sect began to feel conflicted again. Beyond Heaven Mountain had made it to the point that Xianmen Tianzong would not abandon the old for the new, but there was no doubt that Beyond Heaven Mountain would be in a brand new situation. This made the Scarlet Cloud sect, who had gotten used to looking down on their old neighbor, feel a little annoyed. Next, let's wait for the challenge. Chu Yang left the competition venue and returned to his private room in Beyond Heaven Mountain. He let out a long sigh. Qinggu, you definitely don't recognize me. Dao Yuding's advancement to the top 4 was basically within everyone's expectations. To most people, this was the battle with the least suspense among the top 8 battles. If Dao Yuding was defeated, it would be the biggest upset in the Dharma assembly so far. The next battle was undoubtedly the battle with the most suspense among the top 8 battles. Although the battle between the two was the one with the greatest difference in ranking among those who had advanced in the second stage of the assessment, Su Yunxing, who was in first place in the second stage, was up against Rosa, who was in 8th place. Both of them had left the mountain to travel before, and had made a name for themselves. Before this Dharma assembly, they were the most well-known among the second-generation true disciples of Xianmen Tianzong. And within Xianmen Tianzong, Su Yunxing and Ing Rose's reputation was even more resounding. Apart from Dao Yuding, who was in the late stage of foundation building as soon as she entered the sect and had to be counted separately due to special circumstances, Su Yunxing and Ing Rose could be said to be outstanding for a time. The two of them were the first batch of foundation-building disciples to enter the sect and also the first batch of true disciples to enter the sect. From the day they entered the sect, the two of them jointly took the first and second place in all the assessment. They chased each other and were evenly matched. Overall, Su Yunxing was slightly ahead of Ing Rose by a small margin. When the two of them were present, the others could only fight for the third place. Apart from Huang Zhenting and Lin Tong, the two little friends, whose momentum was getting fiercer and fiercer these days, no one could shake their position. Even little Huang and little Lin Tong were still very immature. If they wanted to truly attack the top two, they still needed some time. Only the sudden emergence of Zhou Yunsong in this Dharma assembly changed the situation a little. But in the hearts of many Xianmen Tianzong disciples, due to the inherent impression, Su Yunxing and Ing Rose were the strongest among the second-generation foundation-building disciples. The battle between the two of them had extraordinary significance. Regardless of what the previous results were, in this Dharma assembly competition held in front of the One Heaven Tao, whoever lost would not be able to raise their heads for a very long time. Chapter 695. In the private room, after watching the battle between Zhou Yunsong and Lin Tong, Eloza, who had been silent all this time, suddenly stood up and looked at Su Yunxing. His gaze wasn't as sharp and fiery as before, but it was still as arrogant as before. "I've heard a saying before, but I never took it to heart, but now I feel that it makes some sense," Eloza said calmly. "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and we have to take it one step at a time. No matter what level Zhou Yunsong is at, I have to fight you first. If you're stronger than Zhou Yunsong, then there's no need to talk about anything else. If Zhou Yunsong is stronger than you, then I have to surpass you first before I can challenge him." Su Yunxing stood up and looked at Eloza with a complicated expression. He didn't respond to Eloza's words and simply nodded his head. "Let's go." After saying that, he walked out of the quiet room and headed for the arena. Eloza frowned slightly and followed him out of the quiet room. When Su Yunxing and Eloza entered the arena and Su Yunxing began to designate the environment of the arena, the Xianmen Tianzong cultivators in the Spreading Law Hall all became spirited. In the past, the two of them had fought many times. Not only did the disciples of the Qian Tian Hall pay attention, but the disciples of the other caves would also come to watch. Inside the All Heavens Hall, Lin Feng sat on the main seat and leisurely smiled. The outcome of this battle was already within his expectations, and there was no suspense. Su Yunxing would definitely lose. As the saying goes, as long as you have the heart to lose, as long as your opponent isn't a pig, you'll get what you want. However, Lin Feng believed that the process would be a very exciting battle between a dragon and a tiger, and the final result would be the same as the previous battles between the two of them. The difference between victory and defeat would only be a hair's breadth. Reality proved Lin Feng's expectations. The process of the battle was even more intense and bloody than the previous battles between the two of them. In the end, Ing Rose paid a heavy price to defeat Su Yunxing by a single move, successfully advancing to the next round. Because Su Yunxing's fatal attack had been neutralized by the Spreading Law Hall's magical power restriction, the two of them eventually came out of the arena. On the other hand, Irose's injuries were even more serious. It was so serious that if the sect didn't treat him, let alone participate in the next round of the competition, he might even die from his injuries after a period of time. The actual outcome of this tragic battle was almost equal to both sides suffering heavy losses and perishing together. The group of young cultivators in the great law hall were mesmerized. Even a few Yuanian ancestors repeatedly nodded their heads as they watched the battle between the two foundation establishment disciples. The battle between Su Yunxing and Ing Rosa had not only displayed their outstanding magic power, it had also been a battle of wills and temperaments. When the young cultivators of the major forces saw this battle, they all asked themselves, what would the result be if they were on the other side? Most of them shook their heads in their hearts. Some of the cultivators who had participated in the spell assembly but were eliminated were originally unconvinced, such as Fan Xiefeng, Shi Jingyun, Shi Shaoqian, Kong Hai, and the others. They felt that the first and second stages of the test were too coincidental. But now that they saw the battle between Su Yunxing and Ing Rosa, they had to admit that even if they entered the top 8, they would still be defeated if they met either one of them. While the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong exclaimed in admiration, they all secretly felt that it was a pity. What a pity! It would be great if senior brother Su and senior brother Ing Rosa didn't meet each other. Both of them had the strength to enter the top 4, but now senior brother Su can only regretfully stop in the top 8. Su Yunxing himself was very calm. In the All-Heaven Great Hall, Lin Feng looked at Zhu Yi and smiled. Zhu Yi nodded, stood up and said, "I'll go down to take a look at my disciple. I'll be taking my leave for a while. Seniors, please forgive me." With that, his figure disappeared from the hall. As Ing Rosa's master, it was only right for Zhu Yi to show some concern for him. It was just like how Wang Lin had gone to investigate when Li Xingfei had been heavily injured. At this moment, Ing Rosa was unconscious and was sent out by Shi Tianhao. Su Yunxing, who had been sent out by the Great Law Hall's magic power restriction, was waiting outside. Shi Tianhao glanced at him and said with a smile, "Send him to a separate quiet room. Second senior brother will come and treat your injuries." "Yes, little martial uncle." Su Yunxing nodded, used his magic power to wrap up Ing Rosa, turned around and left. Although he was defeated, stopped in the top 8, and even lost to his old enemy, Su Yunxing's mental state was much better, as if he had removed the shackles that had been shackling him for a long time. He came to the quiet room and saw a purple-clothed scholar sitting inside, calmly looking at him. Zhu Yi took Ing Rosa and first treated his injuries, not in a hurry to speak to Su Yunxing. Su Yunxing also stood there calmly, silently waiting. For a moment, Su Yunxing's thoughts drifted, and his life's experiences flashed through his mind. On the surface, his identity was that of a great Qin official's family, and he didn't seem to have any relationship with the great Zhou dynasty, and there was even hatred between them. But in reality, his position in the Su family was very awkward. To be precise, Su Yunxing's surname wasn't Su, and he didn't even know what his surname was. Many years ago, during a conflict between the Great Zhou and the Great Qin, his mother was kidnapped by the Great Zhou people, and after 10 months of pregnancy, she gave birth to him and his twin sister. To his mother, the siblings were a disgrace. Once his mother escaped, the siblings were abandoned, and the 2 children depended on each other. Later, they became disciples of someone, and they were chosen by the Great Zhou dynasty's spy agency. It just so happened that after his mother returned to the Su family, she did not have any children, and her husband, the Su family leader, also had no children. Under the pressure of the family elders, he sent people to the Great Zhou dynasty to search for the siblings, lying that she had been pregnant before she was kidnapped. Just like that, Su Yunxing returned to the Su family. At the beginning, he did not reveal his cultivation talent. In reality, he was just a chess piece that the Great Zhou dynasty's spy agency had set up in the Great Qin dynasty. The Su family had their suspicions, so although Su Yunxing was the legitimate son of the family leader, he was actually treading on thin ice. After he revealed his cultivation talent, he was sent by the Great Zhou dynasty to go to the Sand State City to become a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong. Thinking about that, An extremely complicated expression appeared on Su Yunqing's face. To him, the following days were the happiest, most relaxed, and carefree time of his life. A relaxed atmosphere, friendly fellow sect members, a brilliant master, a powerful sect, everything was so perfect. But the more it was like this, the more fear grew in the depths of Su Yunqing's heart. It was as if there was a voice constantly telling him, "All of this does not belong to you." The fear became stronger and stronger, as if an extremely heavy shackle was placed on his body, making him feel suffocated. This intense fear made Su Yunqing not dare to imagine what would await him if his identity was exposed one day. Su Yunqing was not afraid of death. But his master Zhu Yi's disappointed sigh, the disdainful and surprised gazes of his fellow sect members, being expelled from Xianmen Tianzong, leaving the environment that made him feel like a perfect home, all of this made Su Yunqing unable to breathe. When the sect opened for the second time, the appearance of the heart-reflecting staircase caused Su Yunqing's fear to soar to the peak. Although disciples like them who opened the sect for the first time did not need to walk the heart-reflecting staircase to take the test, Su Yunqing did not doubt that Patriarch Lin Feng had the ability to see through him. Afterwards, in order to avoid having a guilty conscience, he, Lu Xiaofeng, Li Xingfei, and the others went through the test of the 7 emotions and 6 desires in the Purple Qi Pagoda. Su Yunqing was even more anxious. He faintly felt that he had been exposed. But Lin Feng, Zhu Yi, and the others did not say anything. Zhu Yi turned around and looked calmly at Su Yunqing. His eyes were calm, as if everything was under his control. In the past few years, if Su Yunqing had faced Zhu Yi's gaze, he might have been even more terrified and on the verge of a mental breakdown. But now, Su Yunqing, who had already made up his mind, was extremely calm. Slowly, he knelt down and kowtowed to Zhu Yi. "This disciple has sinned, and I hereby report this to my master." Chapter 696. In the All Heavens Palace, after handing the matter over to Zhu Yi, Lin Feng did not pay much attention to it. On one hand, he believed that Zhu Yi could handle this matter properly. On the other hand, what choice Su Yunqing would make was within Lin Feng's expectations, just like how he had predicted the outcome of the battle between Su Yunqing and Ying Rosa. As long as one had the heart to win, anything could be done. This was not limited to Chu Yang. Wanting to win might not necessarily be as one wished, but wanting to lose was too simple. The only problem was how one lost, and whether the spectators would be able to see it. The outcome of the battle between Su Yunqing and Ying Rosa had always been a fine line. It was actually very normal for either of them to win. Under these circumstances, there was no need for Su Yunqing to go easy on Ying Rosa. As long as his desire to win was not as strong as before, his defeat was destined. Through the secret mark left on Su Yunqing's body, Lin Feng knew that even when Su Yunqing contacted the Great Zhou Empire, he had never leaked any information about Xianmen Tianzong. Of course, this was related to the fact that the Great Zhou Empire did not consult him. They had arranged for Su Yunqing to come here for a greater purpose. They did not wish for Su Yunqing to lose sight of the bigger picture and expose his identity. However, there was a very important matter, one that concerned his life, that Su Yunqing did not report to the Great Zhou Empire. It was true that he hadn't taken the heart-reflecting staircase, but he had participated in the second true disciple exam with Lu Xiaofeng and the others. The 7 emotions and 6 desires transformation test in the Purple Qi Pagoda was even stricter than the heart-reflecting staircase. This lack of information caused the Great Zhou Empire to clearly misjudge the situation, making them very optimistic about keeping Su Yunqing's situation and identity a secret. When a spy constantly expressed to his superiors that he had not been exposed, it would undoubtedly lead to a huge misunderstanding, especially when his superiors did not have any other effective channels to verify his identity. Lin Feng could not be sure if Su Yunxing had deliberately concealed it, or if it was an unintentional and subconscious action. However, this did not prevent him from seeing through Su Yunxing's current bias. Under these circumstances, the outcome of the battle between Su Yunxing and Ying Rosa could already be foreseen. Many people felt that it was a pity for Su Yunxing, but some people didn't feel that it was as simple as pity. The quiet room where Great Zhou's crown prince Liang Yuan was dead silent. No one made a sound. Everyone silently looked at the motionless Liang Yuan sitting on the chair. After a long time, the statue-like Liang Yuan let out a long sigh. "It's all for naught." Liang Yuan lightly shook his head with a calm expression. A Yuanian cultivator behind him stepped forward and said, "This subject was incompetent and is willing to be punished by your highness. It's not your fault." Liang Yuan waved his hand. "If something happens to the people below, they can't blame you, Minister Shao. After all, they are living people with their own thoughts and emotions. They are not clay figurines." The Yuanian cultivator surnamed Shao said hatefully, "That northern militant barbarian only needed to take that little barbarian Xianmen Tianzong in a few more circles. In the end, he actually went to cause trouble for that little girl. Not only did he give himself a free hand, he also ruined your highness's plans." Liang Yuan said, "If it wasn't for the deep hatred between him and that little barbarian, we wouldn't have been able to order him to do things. This kind of double-edged sword always has its pros and cons." Su Yunxing did not live up to expectations. Otherwise, if he had defeated that little barbarian in this round, even if he stopped at the top 4, he would still be the well-deserved number 1 in his group. Zhu Yi would very likely choose him to be the head disciple. Another Yuanian cultivator said in a low voice, "This person is useless and wasted all the effort and resources we poured into him. This time, we also exposed our other precious spies. The gains do not make up for the losses." In the second stage, among the cultivators who were defeated by Su Yunxing and took the golden hoop, there were people secretly planted by the Great Zhou dynasty. The cultivators who dragged down Chen Xingyu's group in the first stage were also connected to the Great Zhou dynasty. Some of these people were sent by the Great Zhou dynasty to participate in this spell assembly. Some were like Zhuolei, rising stars from other powers. Those who could be brought to participate in the Kunlun Mountain spell assembly were existences that their sects focused on training. If the Great Zhou dynasty wanted to send people connected to them to these positions, it would take a lot of effort and resources. But now all of them were in danger of being exposed. This time, Liang Yuan had spent a lot on Su Yunxing, but now he might not gain anything. The cultivator surnamed Shao shook his head. "According to what we know, Su Yunxing and that little barbarian have always been evenly matched. In the small competition 3 months ago, the winner was also decided by a hair's breadth, but the winner was Su Yunxing." The Yuanian cultivator from before sneered. "So what if he won that time? If he lost this time, no matter how much he won before, it would all be lost." The cultivator surnamed Shao looked suspiciously at Crown Prince Liang Yuan. "Your Highness, could it be that Su Yunxing has already been exposed, but Xianmen Tianzong didn't say anything and secretly did something this time?" Liang Yuan shook his head. "I just asked the Grand Tutor. The Grand Tutor said that there were no abnormalities. To be able to hide from so many primordial soul powerhouses in the All-Heaven Great Hall, the Master of Xianmen Tianzong must have done something. But with the Master of Xianmen Tianzong's usual style, he wouldn't lower himself like this." The cultivator surnamed Shao sighed. "Then we can only blame Su Yunxing for not getting along with that little barbarian as soon as he entered the sect. As a result, the other party kept a close eye on him and pestered him endlessly. Fortunately, with our help in the second stage, Su Yunxing's performance was even more outstanding. In the third stage of the arena battle, the two sides won by a hair's breadth. The difference wasn't big." Liang Yuan said, "When choosing a first-seat disciple, one will definitely consider how to deal with people and network. Su Yunxing's performance was much better than that little barbarian, and it also suits Zhu Yi's temperament and thoughts. The result of this battle will, at most, reduce his chances of winning, but Su Yunxing should still be in the lead in the competition. The key is to strengthen control over Su Yunxing to prevent him from having other thoughts. The group of Yuanying cultivators all nodded and said, "We understand." In the quiet room, Zhu Yi sat on a chair and listened to Su Yunxing calmly. Su Yunxing told him about his background, his mission, and all the things he had done over the years. Su Yunxing spoke in detail, to the point that it was a bit long-winded, but Zhu Yi didn't show any impatience. Silently, he listened. After explaining everything clearly, Su Yunxing shut his mouth and knelt on the ground, waiting for the final judgment he would face. After listening, Zhu Yi calmly said, "Yunxing, do you know what the biggest mistake you made was?" After a moment of silence, Su Yunxing replied, "Disciples should have explained everything to the sect the moment I entered the sect. The sect will uphold justice for disciple and have full authority to handle it. Disciple only needs to listen to instructions and arrangement." As soon as he entered the sect, he clearly explained everything to Lin Feng and his disciple. With Xianmen Tianzong's consistent style, as long as the disciple was sincere, then it wasn't that Su Yunxing was forced to be a spy because of his sister, but that the great Zhou dynasty had kidnapped the family of Xianmen Tianzong's disciple. Xianmen Tianzong definitely wouldn't sit idly by. But unfortunately, when Su Yunxing had just entered the sect, Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong hadn't shown their extraordinary power, and they were far from the powerful forces that held a decisive position in the Divine Land. This made Su Yunxing make a wrong judgment. He submitted to the power of the great Zhou dynasty and took the first wrong step. One wrong step led to many wrong steps. By the time Su Yunxing understood the stakes, he had already missed the best opportunity. Thus, he could only suffer, and the fear in his heart increased day by day. Until now, he finally made up his mind. It wasn't to redeem anything, but he didn't want to continue wearing a mask. Slowly, Zhu Yi looked at him calmly and said, "Although you took the wrong path before, you have never done anything detrimental to the sect. Since you took the initiative to confess today, I won't kill you. After the Dharma assembly, I will also go to the great Zhou dynasty and bring your sister back. This will fulfill our fate as master and disciple." Su Yunxing knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Zhu Yi. "Disciple, thanks master." Zhu Yi said, "As for you, you will be punished according to the sect rules. Yunxing, although you confessed everything today, you actually only grasped the last chance. You have missed far more than one chance." He looked at Su Yunxing calmly. "Did you think you were exposed when you participated in the second direct disciple test 3 years ago and experienced the changes of 7 emotions and 6 desires? Our ancestor has great foresight and insight. From the moment you entered the sect, he saw through your background. When you, Ing Rosa, and the others participated in the first purple labyrinth test for true disciples, we already knew everything. From the moment you entered the sect, your every move and all your connections with the outside world were all under the sect's control. There were no exceptions." Su Yunxing knelt on the ground and cold sweat appeared on his back. He said in a hoarse voice, "I was foolish. I am guilty. The sect rules cannot be ignored. No matter what difficulties you have or whether you have really harmed the sect, as long as you are a spy and have evil intentions, you will definitely be punished." Zhu Yi stood up and looked down at Su Yunxing. "Since you have realized your mistakes, the sect will be lenient. You now have 2 choices. First, you will be expelled from the sect. From today onwards, you are no longer a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong. Your cultivation will be abolished and all the artifacts, pills, and talismans you obtained from the sect will be taken back. However, the sect will guarantee that you will live a carefree life for the rest of your life. You will be able to choose a place to live in the Xianmen realm or Cloud Mirror City, and enjoy the rest of your life. Second, I will not expel you. I will give you 10 years. If you can form the golden elixir within 10 years, your lifespan will be increased by 1,000 years. After that, you will have to do hard labor for 100 years. All your cultivation will be sealed, and all your belongings will be confiscated. You will be forced to work in the mines of the Xianmen realm for 100 years like an ordinary person. During this period, your appearance will be concealed and your identity will be changed. You are not allowed to reveal any relevant information and are not allowed to come into contact with other people in the sect until the 100 years are up. After the time is up, you will still be my disciple. Slowly, Zhui said, if you can't form the golden elixir within 10 years, your cultivation will also be sealed, and you will have to do hard labor for 100 years. This time, your lifespan will be limited and it will be equivalent to serving a life sentence. No matter what choice you make, if you do anything to harm Xianmen Tianzong in the future, you will not be spared. Think carefully about where you will go. Chapter 697. Faced with the two options given by Zhui, Su Yunxing did not hesitate at all. He knelt on the ground and kowtowed heavily to Zhui. There is no need for disciple to think about it. As long as there is a glimmer of hope to continue to be under master's tutelage, disciple will gladly endure any punishment. Su Yunxing instantly understood what he would face if he chose the second option. The exploitation of the mother lodes in the mystic heavenly sector was generally the responsibility of cultivators, but there were also some ordinary people who were engaged in the trivial and arduous work as their assistants. It was certainly not as tiring and dangerous as mining in the mortal world, but it was certainly not an easy job, either. Especially the metallic mineral veins, such as the dark light meteoric iron, which contained a thick metallic aura. Just the spiritual aura alone was as sharp as a sword. Cultivators with Qi refinement stage cultivation could ignore it, but mortals would feel uncomfortable. Therefore, this kind of work was truly hard labor. Generally, only sinners would be sent there to receive supervision after receiving punishment. While working hard, their freedom would also be restricted. On the ground of Xianmen Tianzong, there would not be a situation where cultivators bullied mortals, but it was inevitable that they would be ordered around. As the most outstanding true disciple of the Qian Tian Palace in Xianmen Tianzong, Su Yunxing's original position in the sect was naturally not low. When he went to the mystic heaven realm to train, except for Feng Biji and Zen Master Dade who were guarding there, everyone had to treat him with respect when they saw him and even fawn on him. The external stewards in charge of mining resources also had to be careful in front of him, serve him, and provide him with high-quality minerals or elixirs. But choosing the second option meant that he had to conceal his identity and go to the subordinates who originally respected and fawned on him. From a true disciple with limitless glory to a convict, one could imagine how great the difference was. If it was a short period of time, it might not matter, but a full 100 years could not be considered short. For cultivators, they did not know the length of time in the mountains. Although 100 years was long, it would pass very quickly in the process of continuous cultivation. But for ordinary mortals, many people could not live for 100 years in their lifetime. More than 30,000 days and nights of hard labor sounded simple, but when this kind of life really started, how many people could endure it? For those who could endure, how long could they endure? This was under the condition that Su Yunxing successfully advanced to the golden elixir period within 10 years. At the very least, he could look forward to the future. If he couldn't form his gold core within 10 years, it would mean that he would have to work hard until he grew old and died. Moreover, no one would know all of this. On the day of his death, he would only be a sinner serving hard labor. No one would know that he used to be an outstanding figure among the second generation of Xianmen Tianzong, who was recognized by his fellow disciples as the most promising candidate to become the first seat disciple of the Qian Tian Palace, Su Yunxing. If he couldn't live a grand life, he could only die a silent death. If one chose the first path, their cultivation would be crippled and their freedom would be limited, but they would be able to live a prosperous and worry-free life for the rest of their lives. Su Yunxing had thought of all of this immediately, but he still chose the second option without any hesitation, because at the end of that road was the life he dreamed of. All along, the dream that seemed illusory and unreal had the possibility of becoming reality. No matter how difficult the road was, Su Yunxing would be determined to walk on it. In fact, someone as smart as him could faintly feel the warmth and care of his sect under the cruel road. 100 years of hard labor and a silent death. Although it was difficult, it was tantamount to preserving his reputation. As long as he could form the golden elixir period and peacefully reform through labor, after his sentence was completed, he only needed to explain that he had gone out to travel or secluded himself, and the reason for his disappearance could be explained. Perhaps wasting 100 years would cause his cultivation to fall far behind his peers. Not to mention Ing Rosa, even Sun Shuer Yang Tai, and the others would far surpass him. But at that time, when he returned to Xianmen Tianzong, he would still be the Su Yunxing in everyone's memories. After 100 years, he was no longer the number one successor disciple of the Qian Tian Palace. He was no longer a genius. However, he would be an upright disciple of the celestial sect of wonders. His fellow disciples would not know of his past. They would not look at him with colored glasses. Wasn't this what he dreamed of? Even if he had to pay 100 years of hardship, he would gladly endure it. If he couldn't form his golden core within 10 years, then he would have to work hard for the rest of his life. He could only blame himself and no one else. Su Yunxing raised his head. His eyes were clear, and the arrogant eagle seemed to have returned to the sky. He firmly believed that he could form the golden elixir within 10 years. This was his confidence in himself, and it was also to live up to the expectations of his master, Zhu Yi. Zhu Yi calmly looked at Su Yunxing. He could roughly feel Su Yunxing's mental state and emotional fluctuations. There was not the slightest bit of resentment or unwillingness. Instead, he displayed a spirited attitude. This caused Zhu Yi to nod in secret, and he said in his heart, "Yunxing, there are still many things that you haven't figured out. 100 years of hard labor is both a punishment and a form of tempering. If your will to fight isn't worn down by the hard labor and you're able to maintain your current state of mind, then you'll realize in the future that 100 years of time wasn't spent in vain." Fortune and misfortune came hand in hand. How much he could comprehend and how much he could gain depended on himself. Since you have made your choice, you should know that there is no turning back on the path you have chosen. Zhu Yi calmly nodded his head. In these 10 years, everything will be normal for you. The sect will not lack resources for you, nor will it be biased towards you. You have to grasp it yourself. Su Yunxing replied, "Disciple understands. Although disciple wants to form his golden core within 10 years, I know that haste makes waste. If disciple is greedy and relies on large amounts of pills, it will only ruin my future cultivation path." Everything as usual meant that other than daily resources and cultivation, Su Yunxing's freedom would not be restricted. In these 10 years, if he wanted to go out and travel, he could do whatever he wanted to do, and it would all be up to him. Zhu Yi didn't need to say much. Su Yunxing also understood that after everything was said today, if he continued to mix with the great Zhou dynasty, he would have to bear the consequences. Su Yunxing didn't make any promises or make any vows. Everything was in his heart and he knew what was important. "Master, if the great Zhou dynasty communicates again, should disciple feign civility with them or cut off all contact completely?" Su Yunxing asked. Zhu Yi shook his head unhurriedly. "There is no need for either. After this ceremony, I will head to the great Zhou dynasty." Su Yunxing nodded his head. Disciple understands. Zhu Yi glanced at him and said slowly, since you have chosen the second path, you don't have to care about anything else. However, there is one thing that I have to ask you about. This is not only about you but also involves others. Su Yunxing had a vague guess. Zhu Yi's gaze seemed to be able to see through everything and see through his heart. Zhu Yi nodded his head calmly. That's right. The person I am talking about is your youngest Uncle Master's disciple, Zhuge Wanqiu. Su Yunxing's gaze dimmed and he lightly pursed his lips. Don't misunderstand. When I talk to you about this, I have no intention of making any decisions for you or giving you any pressure. Zhu Yi waved his hand and his gaze was clear. I just want to know what you think in your heart. I will not interfere with any decision you make. However, there is one thing you need to be clear about. Once you make a decision, you have to be responsible for it. Being half-hearted and entangled will only harm others and yourself. He indeed had no intention of forcing Su Yunxing to do anything. The entire Xianmen Tianzong wouldn't do that either. If Su Yunxing had the intention of courting her, Zhu Yi would gladly agree and wouldn't stop him. As for whether Zhuge Wanqiu accepted Su Yunxing or not, that was Zhuge Wanqiu's business. However, hesitation and indecisiveness would not bring them any benefit. Zhu Yi looked at him silently. You should know that Wanqiu is actually in love with you. Su Yunxing was silent. The environment in which he grew up had made him mature and sensitive. He was especially sensitive to other people's perception of him. He had actually sensed Zhuge Wanqiu's feelings for him, but he had pretended not to know. In reality, he was also in love with that gentle girl. She gave him an unusually warm feeling, and it was especially easy to get along with her. However, it was precisely because of this that he didn't dare to show his feelings. His identity was awkward, and his future was uncertain. How could he dare to drag that girl into this pool of muddy water? Now that he had finally solved the problem of his identity, he would have to face 100 years of hard labor. Moreover, he would not be able to come into contact with any of his previous acquaintances for 100 years. If he couldn't form his gold core within 10 years, this hard labor might even be the end of his life. At this moment, Su Yunxing had already calmed down. He sighed. Junior sister Zhuge has the talent of a celestial. She will definitely find a good match in the future. Even if I successfully form my gold core within 10 years, it will delay her for 100 years. Being separated for a long time, not being able to see each other and not being able to communicate with each other is a great pain. Since that is the case, it is better to forget about each other in the pugilistic world. It is not that I don't believe in junior sister Zhuge's feelings, but it is precisely because of this that I can't bear for her to suffer. I know that making this kind of decision is actually very selfish. I should have asked for junior sister Zhuge's opinion on the matter between us, but please forgive me for being stubborn this time. Rather than waiting for 100 years, it is better to never start. Zhu Yi calmly said, I will not interfere with any decision you make, but you need to consider it carefully. If you go back on your words in the future and cause a bad impact, I may not just stand by and watch. When it comes to your own matters, you can make your own decisions, but when it involves others, you can't simply do as you wish. I've told you this principle since the first day you entered the sect. Su Yunxing took a deep breath and slowly said, I understand. I have already made up my mind and I will not regret it in this life. Zhu Yi nodded his head. Since that is the case, go. After the spell gathering ends, follow me to the great Zhou dynasty. I will let you two reunite as soon as possible. Su Yunxing once again bowed down. Disciple thanks master, thank the sect. While Zhu Yi was talking to Su Yunxing, the great Zhou crown prince Liang Yuan on the other side was not idle either. He was not thinking about Su Yunxing's matter, but the Marquis of Xuanji, Zhu Hongwu, told him a terrible news. Looks like the situation will be more complicated than last time when the three mountains of Yingxi appear again. Liang Yuan lightly sighed. On the other side of the dermic power voice transmission, Zhu Hongwu's voice was as calm as usual. The great Zhou dynasty is determined to obtain the Yingxi's three mountains. After years of planning, it's time to end it. Controlling the Yingxi will be during the appearance of the three mountains. Chapter 698. Penglai, Yingzhou, and Fangzhong mountains have all fallen into the hands of the great Zhou dynasty. Yinghai will completely become the territory of the great Zhou dynasty. The thousands of treasures within will all be used by the great Zhou dynasty. Zhu Hongwu said, although it has been a long time, the great Zhou dynasty has the greatest exploration of Yinghai over the years. The great Zhou dynasty obtained the great emperor's orthodoxy and cracked the secrets of Yinghai. We have a unique advantage. Liang Yuan continued, that's right. Furthermore, the great Zhou dynasty has the geographical advantage. We have been operating the Eastern Ocean for many years and are much better than others. However, the battle over Yinghai will definitely cause a commotion. The great emperor gave up halfway in his exploration of Yinghai because the demon race received news and started a war between the two worlds in advance, forcing the great emperor to return from Yinghai. Not only did he not gain complete control of the three mountains, but he was also injured. Liang Yuan frowned as a hint of worry flashed across his eyes. Even though the great Thunder Temple has been destroyed, the celestial sect of Xianmen has unexpectedly risen. Even though the great Zhou dynasty has the initiative, we still need to plan carefully. Zhu Hongwu said calmly, the restoration of the Grand Imperial Palace has basically been completed. It is only a step away from its heyday. Apart from being no match for the Haotian mirror, it will not lose out even if it competes with other creation treasures. It is even better than an opportunistic treasure like the Taishu Temple. He moved his palm gently and an extremely terrifying aura circulated around his body. Not long ago, I finally completed my cultivation. This time, I will follow His Majesty to Yinghai. Liang Yuan nodded. This is something that will determine the fate of the great Zhou dynasty. With father and the Grand Tutor, there will be no worries. The great Zhou dynasty has been planning for many years on Yinghai. This time, we will definitely succeed in this battle. Zhu Hongwu's tone was calm. The fate of the great Zhou dynasty is in the sky. It is unstoppable like the torrent of history. We are just moving forward normally now. A look of surprise appeared on Liang Yuan's face. Grand Tutor, you seem to be implying something else? Zhu Hongwu said lightly, Xianmen Tianzong, the great Qin dynasty, the demon race, or the Taishu Temple, if they want to come to Yinghai to join in the fun this time, the great Zhou dynasty will welcome them. Yinghai is no longer the same as when the three mountains appeared last time. A look of shock appeared on Liang Yuan's face. Could it be, Your Highness Crown Prince, after this Kunlun Dharma assembly ends, return to Tianjing City to meet His Majesty? His Majesty will instruct you on many things. After Zhu Hongwu said this, he shut his mouth and cut off the Transcendence power transmission. Crown Prince Liang Yuan did not continue asking. Just the information that Zhu Hongwu had revealed today was enough for him to ponder for a long time. For Xianmen Tianzong and the great Zhou dynasty, they had already fought once through Su Yunxing in the sky. For the people from other forces, they had watched an exciting battle between giants. Even though Su Yunxing and Ying Rosa were both at the foundation establishment stage, this battle could be said to be exciting. However, the exciting result was that although Ying Rosa won, he was heavily injured. Although Zhu Yi treated him and his injuries were basically healed, the spiritual power that he had expended made it very difficult for him to be at his peak condition. Next, he could only helplessly lose against Dao Yuding, who was recuperating. The second battle of the top four immediately attracted the attention of the spectators. Xianmen Tianzong Zhou Yunsong vs Taishu Temple's Chen Xingyu. On one side, it was Xianmen Tianzong's direct disciple, who was previously unknown but had an amazing performance. On the other side, it was the remaining cultivator of the top four besides Xianmen Tianzong. The clash between Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple's outstanding disciple made everyone look forward to it. Zhou Yunsong calmly arrived at the battle arena. At this time, all the cultivators in the spreading law hall no longer dared to look down on this cold and ruthless youth. He and Chen Xingyu stood opposite each other. One was as cold as winter while the other was as pleasant as a spring breeze. The two of them were like two extremes of existence. In the quiet room of the Taishu Temple's disciples, someone asked Fan Xiefeng, "Senior apprentice brother Fan, does senior apprentice brother Chen have a way to restrain that Zhou Yunsong? His burning yang vitality shattering divine art is too vicious and overbearing. Senior apprentice brother Chen cultivates the void yin-yang Dao. Yin and yang coexist. Will his yang qi be burned away by him?" Fan Xiefeng smiled. Fellow Taoist Zhou's divine art is close to innate talent. He has also used his advantage to the extreme. Although it is said to be terrifying, there is a ruler's weakness. Everyone has seen the fearsomeness of his burning yang physique. It can sweep away almost everything. But they have forgotten that he is not invulnerable. Not to mention others, his own ancestor's little disciple almost joined our Taishu Temple's fellow Taoist Luo Qingwu. He can't do anything to her. Everyone was enlightened and nodded. Zhou Yunsong's burning yang physique could almost perfectly restrain Ding Ruanfeng's pure yang physique or little Lin Tong's innate fire spirit physique. But against Luo Qingwu's pure yin physique, he could only stare at her. Without the overbearing power of burning yang vitality shattering divine art and burning yang Dao destruction, he could only rely on his own mana and divine art to fight against Luo Qingwu. At that time, it would depend on their respective cultivation. Fan Xiefeng smiled. Although junior apprentice brother Chen is young, he is the disciple that martial Uncle Lin has nurtured with all his heart. His attainment in the void yin-yang Dao at his age, and among the cultivators in the golden elixir period, he can already be said to be at the peak. Before Fan Xiefeng's voice died away, Chen Xingyu smiled and cupped his hands at Zhou Yunsong. Then, two vigorous mana, one black and one white, started to revolve around his body. In the next moment, the white air flow suddenly disappeared. Instead, the black air flow became more vigorous and vast. A wave of extreme yin and extreme cold power spread out. The spectators immediately realized that Chen Xingyu had pushed his void yin-yang Dao to the extreme. Yin and yang coexisted, transforming all the yang qi mana into yin qi mana to fight against Zhou Yunsong. In the All-Heavens Hall, Yu Hongyan, Li Yuanfang and Luo Qingwu nodded at the same time. Li Yuanfang said seriously, "Just this move alone, his cultivation base is above West Tomb cities by Shiqian." On the main seat, Lin Feng had a leisurely expression. For a cultivator in the golden elixir period to cultivate your sex void yin-yang Dao, he must have cultivated it to the extreme? Lin Daohan shook his head slightly. There was not a trace of arrogance on his face. Xingyu's situation is special. It is not worth mentioning. Since Yang Likuan was crippled by Zhou Yunsong, Shen Qifeng, the reincarnation sect's heavenly Dao primordial soul cultivator who had been silent all this time, suddenly smiled and said, "Just from the start of this battle, I can foresee that this battle will be the most exciting one in this assembly. How can we not have some stakes at this time? What do you think, celestial sect?" Lin Feng's expression did not change, calmly smiling saying, "Oh, Dao Venerable Tian Tan, I wonder what you would like to bet on?" Shen Qifeng smiled slightly. "Let's simply bet on the outcome of the battle. Of course, I won't snatch your sect's disciple to bet on, so I'll bet on Taishu Temple's disciple to win." He flipped his palm, and in a flash, a small world simulated by Dharma power appeared in his palm. The environment of the small world was very simple, and there was only one plant in it. Although it was a plant, it was completely white and fluttering in the air, as if it was formed by condensed clouds and mist. It was coiled into the shape of a vine, and it did not attach itself to any other plants. Instead, it just spiraled up into the sky. It was as if the tree trunk that it attached itself to was the air, the space, and the world. Seeing this vine, Longbing, the reincarnation sect's primordial soul cultivator, changed his expression slightly. "Feather spirit vine?" Shen Qifeng smiled and said, "Speaking of which, it is the feather spirit vine that I obtained from the human Tao. It would be a pity to destroy such a spiritual item, so I kept one for myself." Longbing's face was as calm as still water. Among the 6 Tao sects of the reincarnation sect, the human Tao sect was the sect that was best at cultivating medicinal herbs and refining elixirs. A few years ago, when the internal conflict of the reincarnation sect was at its peak, the human Tao sect's herb valley was attacked during one of the conflicts. Most of the medicinal herbs were destroyed, and only one feather spirit vine remained. Until now, it had not reproduced, and there was only one feather spirit vine left. However, no one expected that Shen Qifeng would take one away. Lin Feng looked at the feather spirit vine in Shen Qifeng's hand silently and did not speak immediately. The feather spirit vine was undoubtedly very important to him and Xianmen Tianzong. It was one of the main ingredients for refining the 33 Days Fortune elixir, but it was extremely rare. Over the years, besides cultivating and developing the sect and educating the disciples, Lin Feng had also set out to search for the ingredients needed to refine the 33 Days Fortune elixir. Up until now, there were only 3 ingredients that he had not obtained, and the feather spirit vine was one of them. Back in the West Hill City, he had proposed to Longbing to trade the feather spirit vine, but Longbing had chosen to decline because he only had one feather spirit vine. Lin Feng looked at Shen Qifeng calmly, and the corner of his mouth gradually curled into a smile. "Unintentionally or intentionally? Since you are interested, I will naturally not be a wet blanket." As Lin Feng spoke, he flicked his finger slightly, and a light and shadow illusion appeared, projecting a scene in Xianmen Tianzong's medicinal valley. It was a dark green vine, and it was the heaven-mending vine. Lin Feng smiled and said, "I will use this heaven-mending vine to bet against your feather spirit vine." Shen Qifeng nodded. "Master of the celestial sect of wonders is very courageous. Then I will shamelessly gamble." The 33 Days Fortune elixir was a secret that belonged solely to Lin Feng. Other than Lin Feng, no one knew the recipe for the 33 Days Fortune elixir. Without considering the 33 Days Fortune elixir, the heaven-mending vine's value and rarity were above the feather spirit vine. The Solar Glory Sword Venerable smiled and said, "In that case we will all be witnesses." Everyone nodded one after another, and their gazes turned towards the spreading Law Hall's battlefield. There, the battle between Zhou Yunsong and Chen Xingyu had officially begun. The magic power around Chen Xingyu's body turned into black yin qi, without a trace of yang qi. It surrounded Chen Xingyu's body and fought against Zhou Yunsong. Zhou Yunsong was not afraid at all. The golden true fire of the sun burned all over his body, turning into black smoke like burning yang qi, dark and ferocious. Zhou Yunsong waved his palm, and the burning yang qi was like a sharp blade, cutting off Chen Xingyu's yin qi. Even if he did not use the burning yang Dao destruction power of the burning yang qi, just the terrifying attack power of the burning yang qi, Zhou Yunsong's battle power far surpassed his peers. The terrifying power of the burning yang qi allowed Zhou Yunsong to not be at a disadvantage even when facing cultivators of the golden elixir period. Chen Xingyu's expression did not change. Although his cultivation was suppressed from the golden elixir period to the late stage of foundation establishment like Zhou Yunsong, his magic power was stronger than Yang Likuan, who was in the same situation. As his right hand changed, the black yin qi turned into balls of light, surrounding him and Zhou Yunsong. Chapter 699. Under the activation of Chen Xingyu's transcendence energy, the black yin qi continued to condense, turning into black light balls one after another. 8 black light balls occupied 8 different directions, and then they shot out dazzling black light at the same time, attacking Zhou Yunsong, who was in the middle. It seemed like a simple siege, but Zhou Yunsong had a feeling that the whole world was his enemy. It was as if the whole world had become his enemy for a moment, and they were launching an overwhelming attack on him. His communication with the spiritual qi in the outside world seemed to be blocked, and he was in a desperate situation. In the celestial Great Hall, the group of nascent divinity big shots who were watching the battle had a look of interest on their faces. Oh? Isn't this the mystic Yin 8 Wastelands technique derived from the clear pure Yin treasure record? The clear pure Yin treasure record was the top great Tao technique of Taishu Temple, which was opposite to the pure Yang mystic heart technique. It was one of the most suitable techniques for cultivators with pure Yin body to cultivate in the world. In the past, if Luo Qingwu had become a disciple of Taishu Temple, she would have cultivated this Tao technique. And the foundation technique that Chen Xingyu cultivated was the Void Yin Dao. After he had mastered the Void Yin Dao and attained nascent divinity, he could have cultivated the clear pure Yin treasure record at the same time. But obviously, it was not the case now. This was the mystic Yin pure Yin treasure record that Chen Xingyu had used after he had transformed all of his transcendence energy into the pure Yin qi, and he had performed the clear pure Yin treasure record on his own. It showed that he had an amazing understanding of Tao technique. Facing the attack of the mystic Yin 8 Wastelands technique, Zhou Yunsong's expression did not change in the slightest. He calmly dealt with it. The black smoke-like burning Yang qi collided head-on with the black Yin qi and destroyed the attacking black Yin qi. He did not fall into a disadvantageous position at all. What made the other young cultivators who were watching the battle in the Great Law Hall gradually palpitate was that the murderous look in Zhou Yunsong's eyes was getting heavier, and it also made his temperament become colder and fiercer, which made people tremble in fear. The overbearing burning Yang qi continuously turned into black saber qi, breaking through the siege and blockade of the mystic Yin 8 Wastelands technique. Gradually, it was about to completely destroy the technique that Chen Xingyu had performed. The horrifying black saber qi had already started to attack Chen Xingyu. Chen Xingyu had put all his attention and magic power into the profound Yin 8 Desolation wonderful technique, which greatly weakened the defense of his main body. At this time, when he faced Zhou Yunsong's burning sun qi, he began to be surrounded by perils. However, his expression was still calm. He just stared at Zhou Yunsong with a slightly strange gaze. Chen Xingyu launched the abstruse escape technique of clear sky circulation to evade Zhou Yunsong's burning sun blade qi. At the same time, black and white airflows separated from his body. As soon as the white yang airflows appeared, they turned into black Yin qi and continuously replenished the mysterious Yin 8 Wasteland. A wave of Yin and Yang was born, and boundless Tao art concepts flowed out from within. It was profound to the extreme. When the Taishu Temple cultivators saw this, a smile appeared on their faces. Yin and Yang are infinite, indestructible. Senior Brother Chen has cultivated the Yin and Yang Tao of the Void to this level. He is not afraid of being in a stalemate for a long time. That's right. As long as this Zhou Yunsong doesn't find a chance to use his burning sun vitality shattering technique, Senior Brother Chen's foundation of transcendence energy will definitely be much stronger. Although Zhou Yunsong's burning sun qi is strong, this kind of transcendence energy path with explosive power will definitely not last long. Even if his transcendence energy is strong and can support a long battle of transcendence energy, he is still inferior to Senior Brother Chen in terms of consumption. As the outstanding disciples that the Taishu Temple had painstakingly nurtured, Fan Xiafeng and the others naturally had good judgment. Their judgment of the situation was also very accurate. Zhou Yunsong indeed had more than 3 tricks up his sleeve. Because after forming his gold core, he would directly face the tribulation of Yin fire, which was unpredictable. Therefore, under Yang Qing's control, he had always suppressed his cultivation to the late stage of foundation establishment and had stayed there for a very long time. Although the consumption of burning sun qi was huge, Zhou Yunsong could sustain it for a very long time. He was not afraid of a fierce battle. However, as a foundation establishment cultivator, no matter how strong his transcendence energy was, there would still be a limit. If he were to fight a long battle, he would still be inferior to Chen Xingyu, who had comprehended the yin-yang transformation infinite Tao. Zhou Yunsong knew his own matters the best. Therefore, when he saw that Chen Xingyu was avoiding the battle and was wholeheartedly depleting his transcendence energy, he understood Chen Xingyu's plan. Duo. A cold light flashed in Zhou Yunsong's eyes. With a low shout, the fierce and overbearing burning sun qi was suddenly completely withdrawn. While everyone was stunned, they saw that the black smoke-like burning sun qi surrounding Zhou Yunsong's body had actually completely reversed and turned back into the golden true fire of the sun. It was not surprising that he was able to do this. He was able to control the burning sun qi and turn it back into yang transcendence energy. This was something that should be done. Otherwise, all these years of cultivation would have been in vain. He would have burned himself to death because of the spontaneous combustion of his yang qi. However, when he was in a fierce battle with Chen Xingyu, he suddenly gave up the powerful burning sun qi. This was something that people could not understand. Only Chen Xingyu's eyes flashed and a slightly dignified expression appeared on his face. In the next moment, the true fire of the sun around Zhou Yunsong's body underwent a further change. However, it did not burn into black smoke. Instead, it turned into white streams of air. Impressively, it was the purest yang qi. It was brimming with a warm and blazing aura. As soon as this yang qi came into contact with the yin qi brilliance of Chen Xingyu's profound yin 8 desolation technique, it immediately entangled with each other. Zhou Yunsong spread his hands to the sides and formed a completely different incantation gesture with each hand. Then, he clasped them together in front of his chest. Su Yunxing and Ying Luoza, who had already returned to the VIP room where the disciples of the Qian Tian Palace had gathered, revealed a surprised expression and said in unison, "Fifth Martial Uncle's Tao Reversal Yin-Yang." The technique that Zhou Yunsong was currently using was the self-created technique that his master, Yang Qing, had comprehended from the 8 trigrams Great Way after forming the Golden Elixir. Li Xingfei, Lu Xiafeng, Zhuge Wanqiu, and the others who were watching the battle also had shocked expressions on their faces. This was because none of them, the second-generation disciples, could successfully cultivate a technique like the Tao Reversal Yin-Yang Qi. In addition to the 8 arts of heaven and earth, the 8 trigrams Orthodox Fist, and other basic divine powers of the sect, they also cultivated the 8 trigrams Evolution Sage Golden Scripture, the ultimate true scripture of the heavens, and the understanding of wind and thunder. Some of them had also figured out some divine powers by themselves, such as Ying Luoza. Some of them had successfully cultivated divine powers derived from these branches of Tao technique. For example, Li Xingfei cultivated the extreme path of the netherworld finger, while Lu Xiafeng and the others cultivated the true fire of the sun. However, Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi Wang Lin, and the others had comprehended the 8 trigrams Great Way of the Heavens, the 8 trigrams Disintegration, the Sword of Change, the Finger of the Netherworld, and the other divine powers. Generally speaking, there were 2 ways to cultivate them. The first was to wait until they had also received the teachings of the 8 trigrams Great Way of the Heavens, and then there was hope for them to learn these divine powers. Those with outstanding comprehension might also be able to comprehend and summarize their own divine powers based on the Taoist scripture. The second was to wait until their cultivation base was higher and they had a deeper understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Even if they did not cultivate the Taoist scripture, it was still possible for them to cultivate divine powers such as the finger of the netherworld. Under normal circumstances, they had to wait until they reached the core formation stage. The same principle applied to Yang Qing's Tao reversal Yin Yang Qi. But now, Zhou Yunsong was impressively displaying this powerful divine spell. In the end, did fifth martial uncle teach him the 8 trigrams great way of the heavens, or did he have amazing comprehension that surpasses us? For a moment, all the Xianmen Tianzong's true disciples were a little absent-minded. They stared blankly at the cold and ferocious young man in the arena. Under the effect of the Tao reversal Yin Yang Qi, it entangled with Zhou Yunsong's Yang Qi and Dharma power. Chen Xingyu's Yin Qi and Dharma power suddenly shook violently. Yin and Yang reversed, and the great Tao returned to its original state. Chen Xingyu's continuous casting of his Yang Qi into Yin Qi was immediately disrupted. The transformation of Yin and Yang, and the endless perfect balance, was immediately broken. The extreme Yin Qi once again turned into 2 streams of Qi, one black and one white. The profound Yin 8 desolation wonderful technique also dissipated into nothingness. Zhou Yunsong shouted. In an instant, he had already burned all his Dharma power, turning it into the extremely ferocious burning sun-breaking Qi. It was like an extremely ferocious demon god had descended into the human world. However, at this moment, Chen Xingyu's Dharma power shook again. Under the interference of the Tao reversal Yin Yang Qi, it still stubbornly turned into extreme Yin Qi. It re-established the balance between Yin and Yang, and blocked Zhou Yunsong's burning sun-breaking Qi. Since the start of the battle, Zhou Yunsong, who had been indifferent and calm, finally showed a surprised expression on his face. He looked at Chen Xingyu with some surprise. In the All Heavens Palace, Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi and the others were also slightly stunned. They turned their heads to look at Yang Qing. They knew that Yang Qing's Tao reversal Yin Yang Qi seemed peaceful, but it was actually extremely overbearing. Any opponent in the same realm would be affected. Luo Qingwu's pure Yin body, or the Taishu Temple's Ding Ruanfeng's pure Yang body, could not completely avoid it. The rare exception was Yang Qing's perfect Yin-Yang balance physique, or Zhou Yunsong's more extreme burning sun body, which could not be affected. There's still another situation. On the main seat, Lin Feng tapped his finger on the armrest. He looked slightly surprised. He looked at Chen Xingyu with interest and said with a smile, "Since there's a burning sun body like Yunsong, there's naturally an extreme Yin body. Just like how the pure Yang body and the pure Yin body were like 2 polar opposites of heaven and earth, the burning Yang body also had its opposite, and that was the absolute Yin body. Those who possessed the absolute Yin body would innately condense their own Yin Qi and turn it into absolute Yin Qi. If they didn't deal with it in time, they would first freeze to death. Therefore, the absolute Yin body was as rare as the burning Yang body. But correspondingly, if a person with an absolute Yin physique cultivated a Yin attribute Tao art, then it would possess a unique advantage as well. The absolute Yin Qi that one cultivated to a certain level would even possess peerless might, and it was capable of completely condensing and obliterating the Yin Qi of one's opponent and destroying it into nothingness. Lin Feng's gaze turned to Lin Daohan and Yen Mingyue and said with a smile, "Congratulations to Taishu Temple for getting such a good disciple." Speaking of which, he and Yang Qing, the master and disciple, taught Zhou Yunsong and the Taishu Temple taught Chen Xingyu. Great minds think alike. Although Zhou Yunsong and Chen Xingyu's physique were most suitable to walk the pure Yang or pure Yin path, Lin Feng and Taishu Temple both chose the Yin-Yang path for them. Zhou Yunsong learned Tao from Yang Qing. Chen Xingyu also cultivated the void Yin-Yang path, and not the clear pure Yin treasure record. Lin Daohan smiled faintly. I've let the master of Xianmen see a joke. My disciple still has many areas that he needs to improve. The battle with your sect's little friend Zhou is a rare gain for him. Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple both laughed without restraint. Although the other big shots also had a smile on their faces, some people could not help but whisper in their hearts, thinking that there would be a good show to watch in the future. Just like Zhou Yunsong's pure yang body and innate fire spirit body, Chen Xingyu's extreme Yin body was also the nemesis of Luo Qingwu's pure Yin body. Chapter 700. On Xianmen Tianzong's side, Xiao Yan and the other disciples turned to look at Luo Qingwu, but they did not look worried. Instead, they teased her, "Little junior sister, it's fortunate that your closed-door training this time was successful. Otherwise, you'd be in trouble." Luo Qingwu raised her eyebrows slightly and smiled. "Before I mastered the fifth sword, it was indeed a headache to meet this person. But now that I've mastered the fifth sword, there's nothing to worry about." Xiao Yan shook his head and smiled. "Tisk tsk, it's a pity that this Chen Xingyu entered the top 4. Otherwise, if he challenged you, we'd be able to watch a good show." Luo Qingwu chuckled. "Fighting with him is not completely worthless. Maybe it can help me further perfect the fifth sword." Xiao Yan's expression was a little gloating. "If it wasn't for Yun Tsong using the yin-yang inverse Tao, I'm afraid he wouldn't have exposed himself. This young man is quite shrewd. He actually didn't show any signs of it before. In the second stage, he doesn't fight with others and tries his best to avoid complicated battles, so that the situation is under his control. It's not like he didn't plan to hide his absolute Yin body. He looks quite cheerful, but I didn't expect him to be so scheming." Wang Lin looked at Xiao Yan. Looking at this person's actions, he did deliberately hide his absolute Yin body, but his target might not be little junior sister. Xiao Yan nodded his head. "That's right, just now I was also teasing little junior sister. But this Chen Xingyu's actions should be a spontaneous action and not the Void Temple's incitement. It's just that his sect listens to his decisions." Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, and the others nodded in unison. Lin Feng, who was sitting on the main seat, listened to the disciples' discussion and smiled without saying a word. He did not expect Chen Xingyu to have the absolute Yin body, but it was not too surprising, and he did not feel caught off guard. Ever since Zhou Yunsong was picked up by Zhu Yi and Yang Qing and became a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong, Lin Feng actually had a rough idea in his heart. With the blazing Yang physique, it was naturally possible to have the extreme Yin physique. Although the possessors of these two physiques could easily die a tragic death due to their own strength, it was rare for someone to survive and embark on the path of cultivation. But if there was a first, there would be a second. Since Zhou Yunsong could survive, someone with an absolute Yin body could also survive. If it was not Chen Xingyu, it could be Zhao Xingyu, Qian Xingyu, Sun Xingyu, or Li Xingyu. This had happened before in history, which was why there were records of it in historical record. However, Lin Feng did not expect that Zhou Yunsong and Chen Xingyu would coexist in the same era, and that Chen Xingyu would be accepted as a disciple of Taishu Temple. As for Chen Xingyu growing into an outstanding cultivator under the guidance of Taishu Temple, that was something inevitable. Lin Feng stared at the two people who were facing each other in the illusion of light and shadow and thought to himself, could there be some other trick in this? This little guy hiding the secret of his absolute Yin body seems to have some meaning. It gives me the feeling that if it wasn't for Yun Tsong's yin-yang inverse Tao, he wouldn't have exposed his secret even if he was defeated by Yun Kong. Lin Feng smiled leisurely. Interesting. There are many interesting juniors in this year's assembly. Inside the great law hall, Chen Xingyu's expression was calm. After a flash of pity in his eyes, he returned to normal. He raised his eyes to look at Zhou Yunsong, and an even more dazzling light burst out from his eyes. He drew a deep breath, and the swirling black yin energy around his body abruptly vanished without a trace. In the next moment, a dark blue mist floated around his body, and there was a pale white light shining faintly in the mist. It really is the absolute yin qi. The big shots in the all-heaven Great Hall nodded. They knew that this was the absolute yin qi that Chen Xingyu obtained after condensing all of his yin energy into nirvana. Compared to Zhou Yunsong's burning yang qi, it was also an incomparably powerful and ferocious divine ability. It was not as ferocious and domineering as the burning yang qi, but it was more profound and heavy. Chen Xingyu straightened his index and middle fingers like a sword and pointed them at Zhou Yunsong. In an instant, an icy blue absolute yin qi turned into a sharp sword energy and shot toward Zhou Yunsong. Zhou Yunsong gave Chen Xingyu a deep look. The yang energy around him was instantly incinerated and turned into burning yang qi to meet Chen Xingyu's absolute yin qi. The black saber energy and the blue sword energy collided in midair. The blue sword energy was incinerated like smoke and disappeared without a trace. On the other hand, the black saber energy was also frozen into ice crystals. In the next moment, it turned into dust and disappeared. Chen Xingyu formed a hand seal with his hand. His eyes were calm and emotionless, but there was a faint blue light flickering in them. The icy blue mist continued to condense and compress, turning into an icy blue ray of light. Within the ray of light, there was a pale and dim light flickering faintly. The cultivators who were watching the battle in the Great Law Hall took a deep breath after being informed by the elders of their respective families. They understood that the icy blue ray of light was the next step of Chen Xingyu's absolute yin qi, the absolute yin infernal baleful qi. Just like Zhou Yunsong's burning yang qi, it had the power of void fragmentation realm, which could destroy the yin and yang of heaven and earth. It could destroy the magic power of the enemy's ability. Once it invaded the enemy's body, it could even condense and extinguish the enemy's own yin qi. It was the nemesis of all yin qi in heaven and earth. Just like Zhou Yunsong, as Chen Xingyu's cultivation base became higher and higher, the power of this peerless ability, which was like an innate talent, would also continuously increase and become stronger. At this moment, the battle between Zhou Yunsong and Chen Xingyu had become extremely dangerous. Once one of them was injured by the opponent's magic power, it was highly possible that it would cause irreparable damage to the foundation of one's body. Chen Xingyu chanted slowly, "Infinite yin and yang, void law realm." Both of his hands kept changing the hand seals. The absolute yin infernal baleful qi that looked like an icy blue ray of light began to revolve around Zhou Yunsong. In an instant, it formed an icy blue small world which enveloped Zhou Yunsong. Layers of space overlapped each other, as if it had turned into a huge ancient bell which fell from above. This is another great ability of the void yin-yang Dao other than the yin-yang crushing heaven and earth grinder. The eyes of Fan Xiefeng and the other disciples of the Taishu Temple lit up, using the power of the void to form a wondrous world and suppress the enemy. After that, using the endless power of yin and yang to refine the enemy. This was another great ability of the void yin-yang Dao. It was called the yin-yang infinite void wondrous world. It was not as violent as the yin-yang crushing heaven and earth grinder. However, it was more stable and did not give the opponent a chance to resist. However, Fan Xiefeng and the rest could quickly tell that the spell that Chen Xingyu cast was different. The magic power that he used to refine Zhou Yunsong was not the power of yin and yang, but his absolute yin infernal baleful qi. If he used the power of yin and yang, it would only be incinerated by Zhou Yunsong's burning yang vitality shattering qi. However, this move of Chen Xingyu made the group of primordial spirit bigwigs feel slightly amazed. Although it's just a simple substitution, and the foundation is still the yin-yang infinite void wondrous world, to be able to make such an improvement, this kid's understanding of the paths, skills, and divine abilities is already rather profound. Chen Xingyu's icy blue pocket world was no longer a pure yin-yang infinite void wondrous world, but a space essence nirvana absolute yin world that belonged solely to him. Using the space essence nirvana absolute yin world to envelop Zhou Yunsong, Chen Xingyu's absolute yin infernal baleful qi began to forcefully suppress him, constantly whittling away at Zhou Yunsong's magic power. As long as Zhou Yunsong revealed the slightest flaw, he would be injured by the absolute yin infernal baleful qi. Nearly endless icy blue streams of light swirled and danced in the pocket world. Although it was light, it gave off a dark and gloomy contradictory feeling. It made the pocket world seem like it had transformed into hell. It was cold, dark, lonely, and made one feel despair. Any life form that was placed in such a world could only return to the nirvana void. Zhou Yunsong stood in the absolute yin hell, his eyes turning colder. The bloodlust around him was so thick that it seemed to condense into a physical form. The burning sun destruction qi around his body became more and more violent and ferocious. He raised his right hand high and clenched it into a fist. Endless black light constantly condensed in his right hand and compressed it further, revealing a terrifying feeling that it was about to explode. It was as if a star had reached its end and was about to explode. It was the magic technique that instantly shattered Yang Likuan's immortal divine light of heavenly path, eternal Yang heavenly explosion. In the next instant, countless extremely condensed burning sun destruction qi exploded and bombarded the absolute yin infernal baleful qi in the space essence nirvana absolute yin world. The terrifying explosive power was displayed incisively and vividly at this moment. Even the absolute yin infernal baleful qi, whose quality was not inferior to the burning sun destruction qi, was forced to continuously retreat. The whole pocket world shook and swayed as if it would collapse at any time. Chen Xingyu frowned slightly. He could no longer care about refining Zhou Yunsong with the absolute yin infernal baleful qi. Instead, he focused on stabilizing his space essence nirvana absolute yin world. In Zhou Yunsong's cold and indifferent eyes, there seemed to be flames flashing, turning crimson red. His entire body began to tremble and black smoke rushed out from his body. More and more black light surrounded Zhou Yunsong's body. It was even more terrifying than when he had used the eternal Yang heavenly explosion. 9 black lights attached themselves to Zhou Yunsong's body. They rose and fell, sometimes transforming into 9 dragon shadows, sometimes transforming into 9 blazing suns. They were not released, but merely the power gathered together caused the space essence nirvana absolute yin world to shake more and more violently, as if it would collapse in the next moment. Chen Xingyu looked at this scene, his eyes bursting with an unprecedented brilliance. In the next moment, his expression returned to calm. He looked at Zhou Yunsong and silently said, "This battle I have lost." Zhou Yunsong's eyes were completely red as he stared fixedly at Chen Xingyu. After a long while, the restless burning yang primordial shattering qi gradually calmed down. The crowd of cultivators watching the battle in the spreading law hall were all silent. They were still immersed in the shock of the battle just now. Although it was only a short moment of time, and although it ended with Chen Xingyu taking the initiative to admit defeat, it did not have the feeling of a strong start and a weak finish. Zhou Yunsong's final, powerful attack that he had prepared at the last moment caused all the young cultivators of the major forces to tremble in fear. Not to mention the Foundation establishment cultivators, even the cultivators of the Golden Elixir period had grave expressions. The finals, it's another internal battle between the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong. Someone said bitterly. The people beside him felt like they had just woken up from a dream and sighed. Their last hope, Chen Xingyu, had also been defeated by Zhou Yunsong. The final first place of the Dharma Assembly had already fallen into the hands of Xianmen Tianzong. In the All-Heaven Hall, Lin Feng first looked at Lin Daohan and smiled slightly. "Thank you for letting me win." On the other side, Shen Qifeng of the reincarnation sect's heavenly Tao was silent for a while and said, Xianmen Tianzong's disciple is indeed extraordinary. I admit defeat. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and the feather spirit vine planted in the small world floated toward Lin Feng. Lin Feng silently looked at the floating light shadow in front of him. His eyes flashed slightly and he laughed in his heart. This pit you dug is really. Now I am more and more interested to know who is standing behind you. Chapter 701. Even though he still had doubts in his heart, Lin Feng still accepted the feather spirit vine without hesitation. Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. The prerequisite was that one's own strength had to continuously grow in order to be the master and not be moved by the outside world. Looking at it this way, I'm only missing 2 ingredients to refine the 33 Heavens Fortune celestial pill. One of them is the Galaxy Purple Zoisha pill, but the other, Condensed Crystal pill, only exists in legends. There are no clues even after searching the world. Lin Feng thought to himself, the only record of Condensed Crystal pill is said to only exist in the Peng Lai immortal realm of the 3 mountains of Yingxi. The corner of his mouth curled up slightly, glancing at the Zhou dynasty's grand preceptor, the Marquis of Xuanzhizhu Hongwu, and thought to himself, I must make a trip to Yingxi. I only hope that there really is Condensed Crystal pill in the Peng Lai immortal realm and I won't make this trip for nothing. Zhu Hongwu was a bit confused by Lin Feng's gaze. His brows slightly furrowed, then quickly relaxed and became calm again. Yu Hongyan turned to look at Yang Qing and said with a smile, Fifth Junior, I remember that you only allowed Yun Song to use the Burning Sun shattering energy. You didn't say that he could use the 9 Suns annihilation, right? Yang Qing shook her head and sighed. He can't use this move now, it's still too early. Luo Qingwu laughed lightly. Looks like he was stimulated by Chen Xingyu's absolute yin qi. Li Yuanfang said very seriously. His ability to control his own mind still needs to be improved. Yu Hongyan shook his head and said, Yun Song's mind and willpower are both outstanding, but his constitution is too special. Using magical powers to the extreme will affect his mind. If it was someone else with a weaker mind, they would have long lost control. She looked at Chen Xingyu, who walked out of the arena with Zhou Yunsong. This person has an absolute yin body and cultivates magical powers like absolute yin infernal fiend. His mind will also be affected, and he will become more and more cold and emotionless. It's all thanks to his good temperament and the teachings of the Taishu Temple that he can remain normal. Yang Qing smiled bitterly and said, No matter what, after the spell assembly, I will continue to urge Yun Song to improve himself. Although they were criticizing Zhou Yunsong, they were very relaxed. Zhou Yunsong had successfully defeated Chen Xingyu and met Dao Yuding in the finals. This meant that Xianmen Tianzong had once again taken the top 2 places of this year's Dharma Assembly. No matter who won, the first place would belong to Xianmen Tianzong. Ever since Dao Yuding became the disciple of Xianmen Tianzong, she had been cultivating diligently. She had merged her original divine arts and techniques of Tianqi sect with the Dao system of Xianmen Tianzong, and she had improved to the next level. But the final result was that Zhou Yunsong had been going against the trend all the way to the top. His Burning Sun Qi fought against Dao Yuding's Yellow Spring True Water, and his Burning Sun Vitality shattering technique used offense against offense to overwhelm and destroy the Ice Essence Burning Flame. The trump card that Dao Yuding had kept as a trump card, the Extreme Ice Spring. Although it had frozen Zhou Yunsong's Eternal Yang Heavenly Explosion, when Zhou Yunsong's 9 Suns Extinguishing Technique appeared again, Dao Yuding immediately determined that if she used the Extreme Ice Spring, she still wouldn't be a match for him. Although she wasn't afraid of the Burning Sun Vitality shattering technique, she wasn't a match for the explosive power of the 9 Suns Extinguishing Technique. In the end, this peak duel between the second-generation direct disciples of Xianmen Tianzong ended with Zhou Yunsong's victory. Although Dao Yuding's cultivation had been suppressed to the late stage of foundation establishment, the current her was undoubtedly stronger than when she was in the late stage of foundation establishment. Dao Yuding's defeat signified that Zhou Yunsong had officially become the number one disciple of Xianmen Tianzong's second-generation direct disciples in terms of magical powers. To become the leader of the same generation of disciples, many factors had to be considered. But in terms of pure combat, Zhou Yunsong was currently the number one disciple of the second-generation direct disciples. This result was out of the expectations of most people present. Before the Dharma assembly, no one had thought that this would be the result. This included many of Xianmen Tianzong's own disciples. They were all shocked. Marquis Jing Huan folded his folding fan and lightly tapped it against his palm. He shook his head and smiled. What an interesting little fellow. He turned his head and looked towards Wang Lu and Xiang Heng. Grandmaster really has good eyesight. I now somewhat understand what he is planning. In the great Qin dynasty's VIP room, Shi Xingyun smiled slightly. Looks like these few years Taoist Yang Qing's cultivation has been slightly slow. He has indeed spent most of his energy on nurturing his disciples. To be able to nurture such a successor, his contribution to Xianmen Tianzong is already not small. In the Cellerita's Sword Sex VIP room, Ancestor Ziyun's expression was somewhat complicated. He sighed and said, Xianmen Tianzong's talent has not been interrupted. There is a successor. Regardless of whether it is Su Yunxing, Ying Luoza, or Lu Xiafeng, Li Xingfei, Zhuge Wanqiu and the others, they are all genius-level figures. Their existence guarantees Xianmen Tianzong's continued development and strength. Dao Yuding's performance also stunned everyone's eyes. It made the golden elixir cultivators feel great pressure. Ancestor Yuanying felt that it was coming aggressively. The other younger generation disciples could even more so only look up to it. But Zhou Yunsong's existence is an existence that even the primordial spirit big shots pay attention to just based on his foundation establishment stage cultivation. A young genius, a heaven-bestowed talent. As long as he doesn't die prematurely, he will definitely amaze an era. Zhou Yunsong's appearance made the others feel as if they saw the same shocking talent and great future on him as his seniors. Lin Feng felt the emotional changes of the people in the Hongfa Hall. He smiled in his heart. Of course. This is the seated contestant that I specially prepared for the second-generation disciples. If he isn't outstanding, I'm going to hit Xiao Qingzi's hand with a ruler. Thinking back to the time when Zhu Yi and Yang Qing brought Zhou Yunsong back, Lin Feng's mouth couldn't stop twitching when he saw him. One has 10 blessings and the other has 8 blessings. They really aren't King bragging. Root bone 9, comprehension 9, will 7, blessings 7. Conclusion: the target's talent is extremely high. It is recommended to take him in as a disciple and carefully teach him. He will definitely become a pillar of the sect. Zhu Yi and Yang Qing impressively picked up a monster with a total potential of 32 points in all 4 talents. At that time, it made Lin Feng speechless for a while. After thinking about it, Lin Feng didn't take Zhou Yunsong in as his disciple. His current mentality had gradually changed. He didn't want all the good seedlings to become his disciple. As long as he worshipped under the wall of Xianmen Tianzong, he would be carefully taught by a master to ensure that his talent wouldn't be wasted. If his own sect wanted to be passed down for thousands of generations and spread its branches and leaves, in addition to horizontal expansion, vertical development was also an aspect that must be considered. It was the right principle to have talented people in every generation. Therefore, in the end, Lin Feng didn't take Zhou Yunsong as a disciple. Instead, he let him go through the normal direct disciple examination process. In the end, Zhou Yunsong worshipped under Yang Qing's Nirvana paradise, and became Yang Qing's only direct disciple. Lin Feng smiled and looked at Spreading Law Hall. In two different elegant rooms, many disciples were discussing spiritedly. Among them were Shi Tianhao's disciple Huang Zhenting and Zhu Yi's disciple Yang Tai. Looking at these two people, Lin Feng smiled with satisfaction. Compared to Zhou Yunsong, these two people were still in a state of immaturity. Therefore, they couldn't stand out in this spell meeting. But in fact, they were gradually showing their outstanding talent. Goldie and Yang Tai were also the second-generation disciples that Lin Feng had specially left behind. The total value of their 4 talents had reached 30. However, there were still all kinds of problems that needed to be solved. Goldie's childish temperament, compared to his seemingly innocent but actually black-bellied master when he was young, was much more simple. Even his mental age was a bit lower than his physical age. This caused a lot of Goldie's potential to be in a dormant state. On the other hand, Yang Tai entered the sect too late. Not long after he reached Foundation establishment, he encountered the large competition. Moreover, in the first round of the large competition, he encountered Goldie, whose talent was not inferior to his, but whose cultivation level was much higher. He was also unwilling to attack Goldie together with the young beast, so the result was naturally a tragedy. There were many reasons that caused the two of them to not be as dazzling as Zhou Yunsong. But it doesn't matter. Good dishes are not afraid of being late. If other sects' cultivators look down on you, it won't be considered as my family deliberately preserving our strength. Lin Feng chuckled. His gaze pierced through the void and landed on the central hall of the Cloud Peak. But you two have to be careful. Don't let the latecomers overtake you. This is the 3rd time I've opened the sect, and I've reaped a great harvest. At this point, the final outcome of the spell meeting had been decided. However, it wasn't completely over yet. The spectating cultivators were also in high spirit. This was because the most legendary first-generation disciples of Xianmen Tianzong would also enter the stage to accept the challenges of the first round of the spell meeting. Among them, Su Yunxing and Lin Tong were Xianmen Tianzong's disciples after all. Even if they were to challenge them, it was really the seniors guiding the juniors. Everyone's interest was focused on Lei Jie and Chu Yang. They wanted to know who they would challenge. Lin Feng's gaze turned and landed on his personal disciples. Xiao Yan and the others looked at each other with smiles on their faces. Most people's gazes were focused on Li Yuanfang and Luo Qingwu. After all, the two of them were the last to enter the sect and had the lowest cultivation. If someone wanted to make a name for themselves, the two of them would be the best target. Xiao Yan smiled and used his transcendence energy to transmit his voice. Master, you're looking at us like this. Could it be that you already have an idea? Lin Feng smiled and also used his transcendence energy to transmit his voice. Tong will definitely pick you, and Yunxing will pick Xiaoyi. There's nothing to guess. That Lei family's Lei Jie will give up the opportunity to challenge him. As for Beyond Heaven Mountains, Chu Yang. Lin Feng smiled soundlessly. He will definitely pick your junior sister. Luo Qingwu was somewhat baffled. That Lei Jie has been famous for a long time. He looks like a proud and arrogant person. Although I don't know why he took the initiative to concede when facing Chen Xingyu in a draw, it seems that he still considers himself to be on equal footing with us. He won't be willing to accept this kind of exchange of pointers between seniors and juniors. But that Chu Yang, why must he challenge Xiao Wu and not the other seniors? Lin Feng smiled but didn't answer. Let's see if I'm right or not. The facts proved that Lin Feng's guess wasn't wrong at all. Little Lin Tong chose his father, and Su Yunxing also chose Zhu Yi. This could only be considered as a gesture of goodwill. As expected, Lei Jie gave up the right to challenge. And as expected, Chu Yang chose Luo Qingwu as his target. The matches between Lin Tong and Xiao Yan, and Su Yunxing and Zhu Yi quickly ended. Luo Qingwu stood up from her seat, her beautiful eyebrows knitted together. He really chose Xiao Wu. How did Master see it so accurately? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.